Chapter 1808. There was no doubt that this was the place where Mayfair grew up. It could be seen from her eyes. That was the way she looked at her home. It was just that Mayfair didn't dare to expose herself in front of the elves of the tribal village. The reason was that her current identity was an escaped sacrifice. The village was actually not small. It was more like a small town. Mayfair told everyone that there were nearly 10,000 elves living in the village. In fact, it could already be said to be a small town. I heard that Eric A's youngest daughter was elected as the new sacrifice. Yes, Eric is very happy now. He gave birth to 3 daughters. The first 2 have been named as sacrifices, and now even the youngest daughter has been elected. It is a great honor to have 3 sacrifices. I heard that when Eric heard the news in the morning, he was so happy that he went all the way out. He told everyone that he accidentally fell into the lake and almost drowned. There's going to be an offering ceremony tonight. I have to go home and prepare. I heard that a lot of people were sent out, but they still couldn't catch Mayfair. The servant team and Mayfair were walking on the streets of the elf tribe at this time, listening to the elves' discussion at this time, or, no matter how the world changed, gossip was inevitable. It was Miss Tina's makeup skill. It was an item called Evil Makeup Bag that was dropped by a small monster in the wild before she formed a team with Boss Luo. At this time, Mayfair only looked like the original elves. As for the servant team, at this time they also looked like elves. My face is really more suitable for the legendary pointy-eared elves. Dr. Gores was quite satisfied with Tina's fierce operation on his face. He looked at the 3 flowers in his hand quite proudly. This was thrown to him by the female elves on the road. It was a token of the celebration at night, which could be used to choose one's female companion. It was generally believed that such a celebration was an opportunity for the young men and women of the tribe to get together, and the number of flowers meant the degree of popularity. In fact, the important thing was that he found that except for the flowers he received, the other people didn't have any harvest at this time. Of course, they didn't come to the tribal village for the flowers. But Dr. Gores was very happy at this moment. It felt like he won the world. Strange, is there a lot of elves around? Sneeve frowned at this time. Although he was not as ugly as before, the word ugly was removed. The maid's evil makeup artist could only help him here. I noticed it. At this time, there were indeed many beautiful elven girls with flowers in their hands. They were looking at the team. Dr. Girls chuckled at this time. Tina, you should make me look more ordinary. Although my foundation is really too good. Will you come tonight? I'll be waiting. My name is Kara. Take it. Well, thank me. Humph. It was a sea of flowers, which surrounded the temporary leader of the servant team. Boss Luo, who was surrounded by flowers and beautiful elves, seemed to be unable to free himself. There were even pink flashes around him. So dazzling. Dr. Gores unconsciously used his strength and broke the only 3 flowers in his hand. Who knows, maybe they broke the flowers themselves. He always exudes a natural and peaceful aura, just like the legendary son of nature who is bathed in holy light. It is normal that he is popular. Elven Lady Mayfair whispered to Dr. Gores at this time, "Don't worry, the girls who gave you flowers are all good women. Do you think I am that kind of person who gets jealous easily?" Dr. Gores shook his head at this time and said worriedly, "We entered the village for information. Now it will only make the operation more difficult. But what should we do now? It seems that he can't get away from these beautiful elves." Tina could not help but think at this time, if this continues, we can't continue the operation. At this time, Sneeve said at this time, "There is a tea house here, let's go in and wait. The tea house is quiet and suitable for information gathering. After he gets away, he should know where to come in. Let's do it." Dr. Gores nodded and then threw the 3 flowers in his hand under the steps in front of the tea house. Mephistopheles was the last to catch up, but she was also holding a bouquet of flowers behind her back. She finally looked back at Boss Luo, who was surrounded by a sea of beautiful girls, shook her head, and then casually inserted the flowers into the flower trough in front of the tea-house. Boss Luo seemed to have a hard time getting away from these passionate elven ladies. He casually glanced at the people entering the tea-house, then smiled slightly and looked at the elven lady with round thighs beside him. Really? You're saying that the captain of the Temple of God, Lord Malik, also found his true love during the celebration? Yes, that is a legend in the village. Don't you know? I am still young. I wasn't born at that time, right? Boss Luo shook his head. You weren't born at that time. You weren't even 70 years old? So young. Wow. It's a little brother. Prophet, hee hee. From the looks of it, he seems to be enjoying it. Then, he looked at Tina and lowered his voice slightly. How is it? Have you found out the murderer who approached us secretly when we were in the tree house? Zhang Lixing nodded. Yes. You found out the murderer who approached us secretly when we were in the tree house? No, I have always turned on the detection function. Tina shook her head at this time. Since we entered the tribe, there has been no response. Will the murderer ignore us when we enter the tribe? Dr. Gores frowned. It clearly wants to kill Mayfair. At this time, where is the murderer hiding? What are you thinking? Mr. Sneeve stared at Mayfair and asked, since just now, you have been absent-minded. Dr. Gores and Tina looked at Mayfair at the same time. Obviously, they also noticed this. Nothing. Mayfair shook his head. I just didn't expect that no one would recognize me when I walk on the street. Although this is a kind of makeup, it still gives me a strange feeling. Really? Sneeve responded with a cold face. I want to go to the washroom. Mayfair stood up at this time. Miss Tina, do you want to go with me? I will go with you. Tina glanced at Dr. Gores. The doctor gave her an accompanying look at this time. After they left the table, Dr. Gores said, I will go to the front desk to show my face. If you have nothing to do, just keep an eye on that guy outside. Don't let him out of your sight. Mr. Sneeve frowned. Since you woke up this time, you have been against him. Do you suspect him? Dr. Gores said expressionlessly, when necessary, even I will suspect him. It's up to you whether you want to keep an eye on him or not. Mr. Sneeve was silent. Undoubtedly, it was impossible to treat Boss Luo and Miss Maid as tourists who accidentally got lost outside the ancient castle. Even Sneeve's speculation that they were modern demon hunters who went to the ancient castle seemed to be unreliable now. He subconsciously stared at Luochio, who was surrounded by a group of elf girls outside, and narrowed his eyes. When Dr. Gores returned to his seat, there was only Mr. Sneeve in front of the table. Tina and Mayfair hadn't come back yet. Why were they gone for so long? Dr. Gores couldn't help but frown. If you are worried, you can go and look for them, Sneeve said indifferently, if you still feel that something is wrong with Tina, who you believe in. Dr. Gores looked at the street casually. He found that the temporary leader of the servant team was enjoying himself, so he sneered, It's good to be popular. Are you jealous? Mr. Sneeve also sneered. Dr. Gores said, Didn't you hear Mayfair say why the elves like him? What do you want to say? Sneeve frowned. It's because of his profession. Dr. Gores said indifferently, Sacred armor, sacred sword. Isn't it clear what profession he got? Most of the time, Mr. Varley will let his servants get their professions and suits. Sneeve pondered for a while and asked, What did you just ask? I heard something. Dr. Gores nodded and thought for a while. It's quite interesting. It seems that we are going to spend the day in this village. Village? Sneeve frowned. What did you ask? Dr. Gores moved closer and was about to say something, but Ms. Gores walked back quickly. She came back alone. Mayfair ran away. Tina said in a low voice, She sneaked away when I was in the washroom. I walked around the tea-house but didn't see her. How could that be? Wish. On the street, Boss Luo, who was holding flowers in his hands, looked at the petite elf girl curiously and blinked. What wish? You don't even know this? The petite elf girl was stunned at this time. Boss Luo had to say that he was still young and this was the first time he experienced a celebration. His elders used to say that children shouldn't fall in love early, so they were very strict and so on. What a pure and innocent little brother! Another boldly dressed elf girl came up at this time. But Boss Luo had too many flowers in his hands, which formed a natural barrier. The boldly dressed elf girl had to say helplessly, "It's the blessing of the goddess Gloria." It's said that if there are young men and women who really love each other in the celebration, they will have the opportunity to get the goddess' blessing and fulfill a wish. But it's just a legend. There has never been a young man and woman who successfully made the goddess Gloria appear in the celebration. It's actually a mystery whether there is a goddess or not. My elders didn't tell me about the goddess Gloria. Boss Luo smiled and said, "Can you tell me more? I'm quite interested." Gloria is the goddess worshipped in the temple on the mountain? Little brother, I really don't know how your elders raised you. They didn't even tell you this? The bold elf girl shook her head and said, "The goddess worshipped in our temple isn't Gloria, but Brahma. But according to legend, Gloria and Goddess Brahma are sisters. It's just that after Goddess Gloria and Goddess Brahma created our tribe, they fell into a deep slumber because they exhausted their divine power. Actually, the original version of this legend should be that only the purest young man and woman who love each other can make the goddess Gloria wake up from her deep sleep." I see. Boss Luo nodded. But legends are just legends after all. The bold elf girl narrowed her eyes and said, "Little brother, if you still want to know more, why don't you be my male companion at night? After the celebration, I'll tell you more interesting things. You can know whatever you want to know." Suddenly, there was a commotion. A figure wearing a cloak rushed into the group of elf girls and even knocked the bold elf girl away. Then, a silver light flashed and cut off the flowers in Boss Luo's hand instantly. Looking at the petals all over the ground and the flower stems in Boss Luo's hand, the elf girls were furious. "Catch this guy. Damn it, my marriage! Don't run." Seeing the cloaked figure leaping onto the roof in an instant, the beautiful elven girls followed suit. Although they were not temple guards, they were still skilled fighters. In an instant, dozens of figures leaped onto the roof and chased after the cloaked figure. Boss Luo shook his head at this time. He looked at the broken flowers in his hand. Suddenly, he bent down and picked up a flower from the ground that was still intact. A small note was tied to the end of each flower. The name of the person who sent the flower was written on it and the place to find her during the celebration. At this time, the only intact flower was tied to the end of the note. There was only one place written on the note without a name. At the same time, Mr. Sneeve and the other two hurriedly walked out of the tea room and said, "Mayfair is missing. Hashtag 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 PS. As usual." Chapter 1809. They were unable to find Mayfair, who had suddenly disappeared, until the celebration was about to begin at night. After some twists and turns, they once again returned to the tea-house where Mayfair had disappeared. If we can't find her original home in the village, is it possible that she went to the temple again? This was Miss Maid's opinion for everyone's reference. Probably not. Dr. Gores shook his head, but it's hard to tell since we haven't been in contact with her for a long time. But we don't have to worry too much. According to the time reversal, we'll just go back to the starting point. Once, twice, maybe we can find the answer with confidence in the first few times. But at this moment, Snake suddenly said, "But if you can't change the current situation even after dozens, hundreds, or even hundreds of times of effort, can you still say something like, at most, it's just going back to square one? Garth? You mean, you think we won't be able to persist and go crazy in the end?" Dr. Girth said calmly, "Snakel, you're underestimating yourself or underestimating us. Let's not talk about others, just Mayfair herself. She must have gone through countless time reversal, but didn't she still persevere?" Sneeve sneered. Don't forget that her so-called persistence is based on the fact that she will clear her memory every time she wakes up. But our memory can be accumulated. Dozens of times, or even a few times. Can you be sure that you're in the same today? I'm not underestimating myself. I just don't think highly of myself. That's all. Suddenly, the sound of the crowd came from outside. It was the sound of musical instruments. Under the darkening sky, the village of the elf tribe was lit up with bright lights. The elves on both sides of the road made way for a group of people wearing house clothes with colorful stripes. They were carrying a palanquin and walking slowly. This seems to be the group that escorts the new offering? Tina's eyes focused. Dr. Gores said casually, "What a poor child. Because Mayfair escaped and tomorrow is the day of offering, she had to be used as a substitute. Wait, do you think it's possible that Mayfair is in the palanquin now?" "You mean, Miss Mayfair suddenly disappeared to exchange for a new offering?" Boss Luo suddenly asked. Dr. Gores sorted out his thoughts. Although we're not completely familiar with Mayfair, according to these few contacts, she's kind and has a sense of justice. Otherwise, she wouldn't expose the fake god when she knew it would be dangerous. Logically speaking, she should have thought that even if she exposed it, no one would believe her. But in the end, she still risked offending everyone and bravely revealed this matter, which was why she was locked up in the end. What does this mean? This means that she might not have the heart to see an innocent child replace her because of her escape. Even if that's the case, what can we do? Tina shook her head. If we stop her and don't let her do anything, we'll have to start again after today. Dr. Gores said, "Before Mayfair disappeared, I asked around. There's a way to intercept the offering." "What way?" "That's to successfully express love to the offering during the ceremony," Dr. Gores said. "There's a legend about this ceremony. If someone expresses love to the offering and can get the blessing of the goddess Gloria, then not only does she not need to be the offering, she can even get happiness." "Goddess Gloria?" Tina said subconsciously. "Is this the name of the god worshipped in the temple?" "No." Boss Luo shook his head and said, "This is a legend." He shared the legend of the two goddesses who created the elf tribe that he collected from the elf girls. Two goddesses? Tina was startled and thought about it. Then she smiled and said, "Mr. Luo is really inquiring about information. I thought you might be drowned in the sea of beautiful girls." "They are more talkative," Boss Luo said casually. Sneeve shook his head and said, "Even if there is such a legend, the elves in the tribe are proud of being the offering. I'm afraid that even if someone intends to woo, they will be cursed by everyone, right?" "That's true." Dr. Gores smiled and said, "So, no one knows whether this legend is true or not. But there is such a rule in the ceremony. If someone wants to express love to the offering at the ceremony, he must defeat the messenger of the temple. Because the person who wants to express love is actually challenging the authority of the god, so he must be punished. Similar things have happened before, and many challengers died in the hands of the messenger. Openly snatching the offering. Even if it's an ancient rule, I'm afraid it will be hated by the elves of the tribe, right?" Tina shook her head and said, "Even if the challenge is successful, and even take away the offering lover, it will destroy the ceremony and the offering. Even if they are together, they can't get the blessing of the villagers? It's not estimated, it's definitely impossible." Dr. Gores smiled and said, "Do you know why Mayfair's parents lived far away from the village? Could it be?" "That's right." Dr. Gores nodded and said, "That year, Mayfair's mother was an offering, but her father successfully took her back. In the end, because of the rules, there was no offering, and the ceremony was destroyed. Because there was no offering, the tribe was punished in the following years, and almost no crops were harvested. Until the appearance of the next offering, the situation was reversed. But even so, Mayfair's parents didn't like her, so she could only live in a remote place and had little contact with the people of the tribe. Even after Mayfair's parents passed away, She was considered an unlucky child, and was not very popular. But even if we know this, how can it help us? Sneeve said indifferently, at best, it can only help us know more about Mayfair's background, which is of no help to the current situation. No, it can help us a lot. Dr. Gores smiled mysteriously and said, Everyone, next, let's participate in this ceremony, and become challengers. Challengers? Everyone looked at Dr. Gores in surprise, but they didn't know his real intention at this time, but Dr. Gores only said that they would know when the time came. You have to believe that we are in the same boat now. What good can I get if I hurt you? Dr. Gores smiled and said, I have seen the key to the light. You know how to solve this problem? Sneeve couldn't help but change his expression. Dr. Gores stood up and said, I said, you will understand when the time comes. Well, I need to prepare for tonight's ceremony. Since we are going to rob the bride, this dress is not good. You also go to prepare, and we will meet at the ceremony. After saying that, Dr. Girls rushed out of the tea-house in a hurry. Then I will also go to prepare. Luaccio also left his seat at this time. See you two later. The maid Tina couldn't help being stunned at this time. Until she saw Luaccio also walk out of the tea-house, she frowned and looked at Mr. Sneeve, subconsciously saying, Mr. Sneeve, don't you go to prepare? Mr. Sneeve rolled his eyes and said, Do you think that if I run up to challenge the oracle and say that I want to confess my love to the sacrificial girl, will anyone believe me? Love at dusk is not a rare thing. The maid covered her mouth and laughed at this time. How will you know if you don't try? Besides, Mr. Sneeve is still very rich. Sneeve's face slightly changed, then he heavily snorted, slapped the table and stood up, saying, See you later. In fact, I don't want to act with you guys from the beginning. Don't forget what you have done to me just because this is the chessboard. Tina narrowed her eyes and smiled at Sneeve, who finally walked out of the tea-house. Then she slowly ate and drank. At this time, she suddenly heard a familiar voice in her heart. Sister Tiff, you finally woke up. I woke up, but they don't know yet. Tina, don't tell them first. I know what to do, Sister Tiff. How long do we have to wait here? Nan Shaunan squinted at the leader of the servants at this time, Cadillac. Not long after they passed through the barrier, they stopped. They said they were waiting, but they didn't know what they were waiting for, in this treehouse they found in the forest. It was strange, the place where this treehouse was located was actually a forbidden area. That was, the forest where a big stone was sealed. It was just that she met Big Stone on the other side of the forbidden area, and this place was on the other side. That barrier was actually filled with a small part of the forbidden area. No need to wait. Cadillac suddenly shook his head. Let's resume our action now. Mr. Varley said that we probably can't wait until today. Well, where are we going next? Nan Shaunan asked weakly. The elf tribe. Cadillac said slowly. He said we are going to find something. Okay. Nan Shaunan shrugged, but her eyes suddenly glanced at a box in the corner of the treehouse. Then she said indifferently, You go down first, I will come down later. Why? Cadillac frowned. Nan Shaunan acted as if she didn't care and said, Mister, if you don't mind watching a woman solve her physiological needs, then stay and observe. With that, Nan Shaunan directly reached out to untie the belt of her pant. Hurry up! Cadillac snorted and jumped down directly. TSK. Nan Shaunan said with a disdainful look, You don't dare to take the benefits given to you, trash. With that, her face immediately darkened, and she quickly opened the box in the corner, then took out a thick diary from it. This witch of the other world's academic school narrowed her eyes at this time, and took out another fragment of the slate, and directly put it on the diary. Instantly, the diary suddenly lit up. It turned into another fragment of the slate, but the appearance was different. Although I don't know why Mr. Varley is waiting here, but he helped me find the second fragment. Sure enough, my luck is here, I can't stop it. She quickly put the two fragments into her arms. When the second fragment was found, She had already sensed the general direction of the new fragment. "Are you done? I have a lot of water." Nan Xiaonan appeared in front of the treehouse at this time. "Aren't I coming down now?" After the evening on the moon. Well, there was no moon in the dimension where the elf tribe was. But the atmosphere was right. Those young men and women who were going to be together in the upcoming celebration were now together in pairs in the alley, under the eaves or beside the small bridge. Boss Luo, who was enchanted by the spell of disguise, now walked to the back of an abandoned house. The back was connected to the stream that ran through the village. The water wheel house beside the stream was the destination of Boss Luo's trip, which was the place indicated by the note tied to the only intact flower. There was no one around, only the sound of flowing water and the sound of the water wheel turning, and the sound of knocking on the door. Boss Luo actually just knocked once, and the door of the water wheel house squeaked and slowly opened. A light came in from the small window, which was the light of the village opposite the stream. It was so weak that only a vague figure could be vaguely seen. "You really came." The vague figure walked out a little, but it was still vague, but the voice was very clear. Luoqiu smiled slightly. "There is only one intact flower left. Such an obvious hint. I think if I don't come, it will be disappointing." "Don't worry about the things here," the vague figure said faintly. "No matter how many times you come, the result is the same. This is a nightmare that won't wake up and there won't be a tomorrow. Anyway, you came here just to take one thing. Take it and then go back to the treehouse. Tomorrow will come naturally." As the vague figure said, she threw out something, a box with something in it. It was now in Boss Luo's hand. Boss Luo opened the box and took a look, then closed it. "I am curious about one thing. Do you like sweets?" "Yes," the vague figure said indifferently. "I see." Boss Luo said slowly. "We meet again, Miss Mayfair who doesn't like sweets. To be exact, you remember me. Last time when you woke up, you told me that you don't like sweets and hate humans." The blurry figure suddenly became clear. She walked closer, and the light from afar shone on her body. She was wearing the majestic uniform of the temple guards, which made her look particularly cold. Hashtag 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 PS 7684. Chapter 1810. "I don't know what you're talking about." In the water wheel house, she spoke quickly. "You've already gotten the thing. Let's go." "How did you do it?" Boss Luo suddenly asked. She wanted to leave, but now she had to stop and subconsciously said, "What? How did I do it?" Let two Mayfair exist at the same time and reasonably. Mayfair, who was wearing the temple guard uniform, suddenly became serious and suddenly attacked. "You're not the one who should take it away." At this moment, Mayfair wanted to take back the box that she had just handed over. But what surprised her was that she, who had been prepared for a fierce battle, was unexpectedly able to easily take back the box. In other words, Boss Luo directly threw the box back. "Since I'm not the one who should take it away, then I'll give it back to you." Luo Qiu looked at her, who was surprised, and said indifferently, "Give it to the person you think should give it to." "What are you?" Mayfair stared at the box in her hand and couldn't help but frown. "Who I am is not important." Boss Luo smiled and said, "What's important is that I'm now an adventurer who is investigating why Miss Mayfair was trapped on the same day. For me, compared to the treasures I can get from here, the truth of the matter is more valuable." She was silent. Boss Luo said, "Of course, if you're willing to tell me the truth now, I'll be happy to listen. But if you don't want to, I'll continue to investigate little by little. Up to you." She suddenly raised her head and hid in the darkness. "I hope you won't regret it." "Last question," Boss Luo suddenly asked. "The first time, the key I picked up outside Captain Malik's room, it was you who left it, right?" There was no response. The figure hidden in the darkness had already disappeared. There was still the sound of the water wheel turning outside. Then, on the other side of the stream, the celebration in the village had just begun. Boss Lua walked out of the water wheel house and looked at the reflection of the lights on the stream. He suddenly stretched and whispered to himself, "I wonder if Mr. Gores and the others are ready." Anyway, he didn't plan to prepare anything. Miss Tina's makeup artist was actually very good. There would be a big ceremony in the village square. There was a huge statue of a blindfolded woman sitting on the throne, Goddess Brahma. The young man and woman arrived at the venue of the grand ceremony. They were waiting for the arrival of the blessing. It was not the blessing of another legendary goddess, Gloria, who had never appeared, but the blessing of the goddess, Brahma, brought by the temple messenger. They believed that under the blessing of the goddess Brahma, the young man and woman who could successfully marry each other today would obtain a lifetime of happiness. The person who presided over the blessing of the goddess Brahma was the sacrifice that was about to be sent to the temple as a sacrifice, the youngest daughter of Eric's family. He saw Eric, who was standing with his wife, with tears of excitement on his face. The grand ceremony is about to begin. An old man slowly walked out with a scepter in his hand. Now, the young people who are interested in marrying each other today, please come out and prepare to receive the blessing from the goddess, Brahma. At this moment, the braziers around suddenly lit up, and the temperature and brightness increased a lot in an instant. At the palanquin that carried the sacrifice, a woman wearing a veil slowly walked out. The reason why her face was covered was that since she became a sacrifice, her body and mind belonged to the god of the temple. Since then, her appearance and even her voice could only belong to the god, and she was forbidden from direct contact with mortals. Beside the sacrifice girl stood a tall man wrapped in black armor with 2 swords on his back. The oracle of the temple, the person who walked in the tribe on behalf of the goddess, Brahma. At this moment, young men and women walked out slowly from all over the venue, hand in hand. Sacrificial music sounded, making everything solemn. The oracle in black armor looked at the sacrifice girl and nodded. Then, the sacrifice girl walked slowly to the statue of the goddess, Brahma. "Wait a minute dash!" A sudden voice sounded. It seemed to come from all directions, instantly interrupting the silence of the grand ceremony. The elves couldn't help but look around in confusion, trying to find the person who interrupted the solemn grand ceremony. "It's not time to start yet." The voice sounded again, "because a pair of lovers who should receive the blessing hasn't arrived yet." "Nonsense." The old man with a scepter knocked the floor heavily with his scepter. "Whose child is this? She's so mischievous." "Don't worry, I'm coming out." A figure jumped down from a high place with his hands clasped behind his back. He was in a snow-white robe with a handsome face, accompanied by fluttering flowers and petals. The handsome elf in the snow-white robe landed lightly like a feather. "Since today is the night of the union of 2 lovers, we can't miss this part of the ceremony, don't you think so, my lover, Xiaolina?" The handsome man in the snow-white robe looked at the sacrifice girl and said. As for Xiaolina, she was the little girl of the Eric family, the original name of the sacrifice girl. What's he going to do? He wants to express his love to the sacrifice girl. Does he want to receive the blessing? Treason! Treason! Stop him! Beat him down! Have you forgotten the tragedy that happened that year? The young elves didn't know what was going on, but the old elves' faces all changed. Especially the father of the sacrificial girl, old Eric, who couldn't take the shock and fainted while clutching his heart. "Nonsense! Nonsense! Whose child are you?" The old man with the scepter, the village head, frowned. "Why haven't I seen you before?" "My name is Gores." The handsome young man. Gores showed a charming smile. "Village head, it's not strange that you don't remember me. I'm just too low-key. But today, my lover is going to be the sacrifice of the temple. At this moment, I feel that I'm going to explode. I can't keep a low profile anymore. I'm going to challenge this oracle, defeat him, and take away my love, Xiaolina." His affectionate face. What is he going to do? In the crowd, Mr. Sneeve, who covered half of his face with his hat, couldn't help but open his mouth in disbelief. They scattered when they were in the tea-house, even though they had agreed to meet at the scene of the celebration in the evening. However, Mr. Sneeve, who had arrived early, couldn't find the others. He could only hide in the crowd for the time being, until Dr. Gore's voice suddenly sounded. At that time, he had a bad feeling, but he didn't expect Gores to show up in such a flashy way and challenge the oracle of the temple. Where are the other two? Mr. Sneeve tried to find Tina and Luaccio in the crowd. However, Gore's declaration was so shocking that it caused quite a commotion in the crowd. I heard that in the past, there was someone who successfully defeated the oracle and took away the sacrifice girl. The young elves whispered. For the sake of his lover, he didn't hesitate to challenge the oracle and become the target of public criticism. How romantic! I know that they live under the hill on the other side of the sleeping forest outside the village. They also have a daughter called Mayfair. I heard that because the son of a sinner, Mayfair, escaped, old Eric's daughter had to be sacrificed. Although it's said that there are 3 sacrifices in a family, old Eric's daughter has been sacrificed. Old Eric is quite pitiful. After he died, he didn't even have a descendant to sweep his grave. Old Eric, who had just woken up, rolled his eyes and fainted again. Seeing that the commotion couldn't be calmed down, the old man, the village chief, was anxious. He quickly looked at the sacrifice girl, Chiaolina, and subconsciously asked, "Is this really your lover?" The masked sacrifice girl seemed to be anxious at this time. When she was about to speak, the oracle in black armor suddenly reached out his hand and stopped her. The voice coming from the helmet was hoarse and low. "Remember your identity. From now on, everything you have belongs to the god. Your appearance, your body, and even your voice." The sacrifice girl couldn't answer the village chief's question, but her eyes couldn't help but reveal panic. At this time, the oracle in black armor directly pulled out 2 swords from his back and said indifferently, "Since someone wants to challenge me, then challenge me. It won't take too much time. I'll end this duel soon." That's fine." The village chief was helpless and could only retreat. He signaled for the young elves and elves who were waiting to receive their blessings to leave first and then let people clear out the celebration hall. Only the spotless Dr. Gores, who was wearing a white bag, was left. He stood with his hands behind his back and looked at the oracle in black armor. The atmosphere gradually became anxious. "If you're not going to attack, then let me attack," the oracle in black armor said indifferently. He held his sword and walked over step by step. However, Dr. Giles suddenly said, "Wait a minute, there's someone else." "Who else?" the village chief said angrily. He had already asked people to check who this kid was. He was so immature, but they still couldn't find him. Gores chuckled and said, "Maybe you don't know, but I'm not the only one who truly loves Chiaolina. Chiaolina, you're the star of Heavenly Star. You're so dazzling. Do you know that your beauty is a sin? A sin that not only makes me sink deeply into, but also makes others unable to extricate themselves. Why did you let me meet you in my life? There's someone else?" The oracle in black armor didn't care about the sappy words of this troublemaker, but he cared about the fact that there was someone else. Gores suddenly pointed and said loudly, "Come out, Dusk Sword Sneeve. I've already seen you. Chiaolina is here. Our true love is about to be sent to the temple. Can you bear this kind of eternal separation?" At this moment, the crowd dispersed because of Gur's direction. Thus, Snake, who was hidden in the crowd, had no choice but to be exposed to the crowd. Dusk Sword? The exposed Mr. Sneeve was gnashing his teeth and trembling, because of anger. He's the other guy, who also loves Chiaolina deeply. So old? Old Eric, who had been woken up by his wife's cold water, suddenly fainted again. This time, he even spat out some white foam. Nonsense. Nonsense. The village chief kept knocking on the floor. Love. It surpasses all obstacles. Love can surpass the gap of age. Dr. Gores held his heart and said loudly, I'm also very sad, I'm also in pain. But at the same time, I'm also very moved. In the dusk, Sneev's love is so humble. Although he's so ugly at this moment, he's noble. Because he's willing to accompany me on this path of challengers for his true love. I'll kill you, you bastard. Mr. Sneeve accidentally showed his weapon because he was too angry. But the surrounding crowd immediately squeezed back. Looking at the current situation, he was afraid that he couldn't get away with it. He could only clench his teeth and walk out of the crowd. He walked to Dr. Gore's side and lowered his voice. If you don't give me a reasonable explanation, beat this oracle first. Remember, we're in the same boat now, Dr. Gores said quickly. Sneeve could only snort coldly. The oracle didn't seem to care about one more challenger and wasn't in a hurry to attack. Can we start? If there's no one else, I'll end this farce immediately. At this time, a figure quickly flashed over. It was a cute female elf with a petite figure. Since they're all here, I can't just ignore it. The female elf, Tina, who was dressed as a maid, smiled at this time. Count me in this challenge. I also want to fight for Chiao Lina. Nonsense, nonsense. At this time, the old village chief knocked his scepter again. But before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by old Eric, who woke up. This glorious person who had 3 sacrifices angrily pressed the old village chief down and screamed, Nonsense! This is nonsense. This time, old Eric didn't faint. Instead, he looked at his wife angrily. You taught your daughter well? One is fine, but now even an old guy, a woman, is here. Why is her taste so bad? When he thought that his daughter might be doing something with these 3 guys, it was old Eric's wife's turn to foam and faint. Hashtag 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 PS. As usual. Chapter 1811. It seems that everyone is here. I have thought of the lines to introduce you properly. Tina, you are very cool tonight. Doctor's introduction is unnecessary, Miss Maid said with a smile, but if everyone is here, isn't there one person missing? Dr. Gores looked around and shook his head. If he wants to appear, he should have appeared. There is no movement at this time. Let's leave him alone. What we need to do now is to defeat this oracle. Sneeve frowned. Do you suspect that Mayfair's time reversal has something to do with this celebration? At that time, Mayfair's parents were married in this way, and she was born as a sinful child. Dr. Girth said quickly. If this has offended the gods and caused the gods to punish us, wouldn't it be a little too low class if it's just a few years of harvest? So, Doctor, is it because the goddess's punishment is related to Miss Mayfair's time reversal? Tina seemed to think of something and immediately said, but this oracle doesn't seem to be easy to deal with. Teamwork. Dr. Gores smiled and then took out several bottles of potions. He said with a smile, Didn't we pick up a lot of potions when we followed, Captain? This was the truth. Not only Dr. Gores, but Tina and Sneeve also had a lot of recovery potions in their hands. This kind of supply even made them think that Boss Luo might have a function card like a drop-up. And this. Dr. Gores finally took out a scroll and smiled. Whether it succeeds or fails, it mainly depends on this. Obviously, this was the invisibility scroll that Boss Luo gave to Dr. Gores. Although the captain, who had the highest combat power and could kill one monster with one sword, was not here, the 3 of them were still confident with these items in their hands. It was not the first time they had entered the world of the chessboard, so they were not unfamiliar with battles. It seems that you are ready, right? The black armor oracle waved his hand. Then don't waste any more time. Let's do it. Dr. Gores chuckled and quickly said, You guys keep him busy, I'll find an opportunity to stab him in the back. After saying that, Dr. Gores instantly opened the scroll in his hand and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Sneeve and Tina looked at each other at this time, then attacked the black armor oracle together. This is against the rules. Duels are sacred and fair. I don't recognize this battle. The village head struggled to push old Eric away and said angrily, only a one-on-one duel will be recognized. It doesn't matter. It's too much of a waste of time to do it one by one. The Black Armor Oracle was holding two swords at this time. Facing Sneeve and Tina's attacks, he did not panic at all. He blocked with his swords like an airtight high wall. Not good. This oracle's level may be higher than that of the Minotaur guard in the trial road. After fighting for a while, Sneeve felt that something was wrong. The Black Armor Oracle's strength was completely beyond imagination. They believed that their attacks could break through the Black Armor Oracle's defense. After all, there was only one set of divine armor that was known to have invincible physical defense, and it belonged to them. The problem was that it was one thing to be able to break through the defense, but it was another thing to be able to effectively hit the opponent. At this time, Sneeve suddenly retreated from the battle, leaving Tina to deal with the Black Armor Oracle alone. He was ready to regroup and wait for an opportunity to attack. What are you doing? He doesn't have any flaws. Once I use my invisibility, I will come into contact with him. There is only one chance. Dr. Gors's voice suddenly sounded in Sneeve's ears. If you can do it, why don't you go? Sneeve could not help but snort coldly. Didn't you see the Black Armor Oracle's swordsmanship? It doesn't look like it can be trained by a human. At this time, Dr. Gors felt as if he was in a dark space. Everything in his line of sight had become black and white. This kind of invisibility even made his body enter a different space. He could indeed see the Black Armor Oracle's powerful swordsmanship. He was secretly anxious, but he could not find an opportunity to give the Oracle a fatal backstab. Did Mayfair's father really defeat the Black Armor Oracle? How powerful was her father at that time? At this moment, Tina suddenly ignored the danger and directly used her hand to grab the blade of the black-armored ambassador of God's sword. She immediately interrupted the black-armored ambassador of God's powerful swordsmanship. She was probably shocked that someone would risk the danger of having their hand cut off. Good chance, Dr. Gors shouted in his heart. Immediately, his figure passed through the white and black in front of him and flashed to the back of the Black Armor Oracle. The air shook for a while. A figure appeared like a meteor. At the same time, a cold gleaming dagger directly pierced the back of the Black Armor Oracle's head, at the gap between the helmet and the armor. Success. Dr. Gors revealed a faint smile. Then, the smile disappeared. His dagger did not pierce through the gap of the helmet. Instead, it was blocked by the sword's scabbard. It turned out that the Black Armor Oracle used his palm to slap the bottom of the scabbard on his back. He slapped the scabbard up and blocked the fatal backstab. A terrifying battle was about to begin. Dr. Gors was shocked. However, at this time, the Black Armor Oracle directly turned around and slashed with his sword. Dr. Gors dangerously pulled back his dagger and blocked the sword's slash. However, his body could not withstand the impact of the sword and was directly swept away. He turned around in the air and landed more than 10 meters away. Moreover, his hand that was holding the dagger had lost all feeling. The invisibility effect was also directly broken. This feeling, this powerful swordsmanship. Dr. Gors stared at the Black Armor Oracle in front of him in a daze and said subconsciously, "You are, however." The Black Armor Oracle did not respond. Instead, he took a step forward and his body suddenly slid forward. He directly aimed his sword at Gors's waist, intending to cut him in half. Gors's whole body became cold. At this critical moment, he found that he could not move. He could only stare blankly at the Black Armor Oracle's sword that was about to cut his waist. The feeling of death began to spread and Sneeve and Tina were unable to save him at this time. I haven't cleared the level yet. This thought flashed through his mind. Dr. Gors felt that at this time there was no pain. When he opened his eyes again, he found that he did not return to the forest where he first met Mayfair. Time did not turn back. He was not dead, but still in the celebration venue. The Black Armor Oracle was still in front of him, but this time, there was a tall figure in front of him. He blocked in front of Dr. Gores and successfully blocked the Black Armor Oracle's fierce attack. The weapon used was a magic staff that was 2 meters long. "You are..." Dr. Gores could not help but tremble at this time and blurted out, "Cade Lie." At this time, the person who successfully blocked the Black Armor Oracle's attack and saved Dr. Gores was Mr. Varley's servant, the member of the vampire monitoring team who was beaten to level up again. Cade Lie. After the Black Armor Oracle's attack was blocked, he was not too shocked. Instead, he directly advanced. This time, he went straight for Cade Lie. But at this time, Cade Lie's thick and long magic staff suddenly burst out a sharp black wind, directly shaking the Black Armor Oracle's body. The Black Armor Oracle took a few steps back and stopped. The Black Armor Oracle lowered his head and looked at some scratches on his black armor. After a moment of silence he said, "You also came to defeat me and then take away the sacrifice? Anyway, there are already several people who want to challenge you. I am not the only one." Cade Lie said indifferently at this time, then waved the long magic staff in his hand. The gem inlaid on the top of the long magic staff shone deeply at this time, and then continuously spat out dark gray bubbles that were the size of basketballs. A total of 10 bubbles were spat out in an instant. But after these dark gray bubbles appeared, they continued to split. Soon, the 10 bubbles that were spat out had divided into hundreds, densely filling the sky above the celebration venue. At this time, Cade Lie pointed the magic staff in his hand, and suddenly, 5 bubbles directly rushed toward the Black Armor Oracle. At this time, the Black Armor Oracle directly slashed with his sword. The sword broke one of the dark gray bubbles, but what followed was a shocking explosion. Bang, bang, bang! 5 loud explosions sounded in succession, and the Black Armor Oracle was completely covered by the thick smoke of the explosion, but soon, the Black Armor Oracle walked out of the thick smoke. On the black armor, there was a trace of visible damage that could be seen with the naked eye, but the Oracle did not seem to be injured because of this, at least. Before this armor could be opened, there was no way to confirm whether he was injured or not. But at this time, hundreds of dark gray bubbles, under the command of Cade Lie, surrounded the Black Armor Oracle. They quietly floated, exploding with a touch. The Black Armor Oracle silently stood in place, motionless. Looking at these dark gray bubbles floating, he seemed to be thinking about how to deal with them. This is the Shadow series, one of the ultimate skills of that profession, right? Dr. Gores stood up again at this time, looking at Cade Lie, who turned the situation around with one move. He frowned and said, "You changed your profession so quickly, and you even cultivated it. You are worthy of being Mr. Varley's follower. There is something called legacy." Cade Lie said indifferently, "It should be said that your master, Mr. Varley, has left too many legacies here. No wonder no one has ever been able to win against him here. This is an equal contest from the beginning." Looking at the Black Armor Oracle, who was trapped by the dark gray bubbles and temporarily unable to move, Dr. Gores thought for a while and said, "What is the purpose of Mr. Varley asking you to come here? I am not interested in telling you that we are not on the same team now." Cade Lie said indifferently, "Since entering this place, I have lost contact with my master. The only thing I can do is to follow his orders recently." "Needless to say, I can probably guess it," Dr. Gores suddenly said. "Now, let's defeat this oracle first." "Okay." Cade Lie nodded and immediately waved the staff in his hand. The grayish-black bubbles that were quietly floating suddenly moved. Hundreds of bubbles rushed toward the Black Armor Oracle at the same time. "Danger!" The old village head screamed, "Everyone, run!" These bubbles, only a few of them exploded, and it was already quite terrifying. If hundreds of them exploded together, perhaps the entire celebration venue would be, boom! A terrifying pillar of fire instantly shot up into the sky amidst the black smoke. The resulting impact instantly engulfed the entire celebration venue. After the disaster, the celebration venue was almost destroyed by the impact. There were flames everywhere, and the gathered elves fell to the ground due to the shock, wailing in pain. Sneeve and Tina were blown far away due to the impact of the explosion, and they were busy taking potions to recover. Dr. Gores was very smart, and he hid behind Cade Lie. If this guy had the ability to launch such an attack, he would naturally be able to survive it. Sure enough, although the explosion was powerful, Cade Lie was unharmed. Even Dr. Gores looked refreshed at this moment. No wonder it is one of the few ultimate professions in the game, chessboard. Dr. Gores shook his head at this moment. It seems that Mr. Varley is determined to win this time, in terms of dealing with my unfortunate captain. I will pay back double for the previous sword attack. Cade Lie snorted coldly, but you didn't seem to be with him. We were separated for the time being. Dr. Gores said calmly, or maybe we were hiding on the side, but after seeing the power of your skill, we decided to hide. After all, the holy set doesn't have a high resistance to magic attacks. It doesn't matter. We will meet sooner or later, Cade Lie said calmly, and he immediately looked at the center of the explosion. After the thick smoke, a figure was still standing there. Cade Lie couldn't help but frown, and he waved his long staff again, looking like he was ready to attack at any moment. In the deep pit, the black-armored oracle was still standing straight. However, the armor on his body was full of cracks and shattered. Pieces of black armor instantly fell off from the body of this black-armored oracle. It is indeed you, Captain Malik. Dr. Gores chuckled. I have only seen such powerful sword skills here once. In the deep pit, Captain Malik, whose armor was shattered, suddenly raised his head at this time, destroying the celebration venue, blaspheming the majesty of God. Sentence. After that, Captain Malik seemed to be suffering from some kind of pain. His skin and flesh began to bulge. In an instant, something broke out of his flesh and blood. That was actually the roots of plants. Outside the celebration venue, a figure lying on the roof of an elf's house was watching the battle in the venue while clicking his tongue. Oh, it seems to be a common thing. After defeating once, he will immediately undergo a second transformation. Nan Xiaonan took a snack at this time and ate it with relish. What are you eating? It smells so good. I just got it from the small stall at the celebration. Nan Xiaonan was shocked at this time and almost swallowed. She opened her eyes wide and turned her head. Mr. Luo? She recognized it at a glance. Even if Boss Luo had used witchcraft to disguise himself as an elf, how could there be such a good-looking elf? Hello, Lady Nan. Boss Luo smiled and said. You. Mr. Luo, why are you here? Nan Xiaonan swallowed her saliva and asked subconsciously. There were too many people at the celebration and I couldn't see clearly, so I chose a higher position, Boss Luo said casually. I didn't expect to meet Lady Nan here. What a coincidence. What the hell? Nan Xiaonan swallowed her saliva again quietly and then turned her eyes. But at this time, the two slate fragments hidden under her clothes suddenly lit up. At the same time, the small bag hanging on Boss Luo's waist also lit up with the same light. You. What's this? Nan Xiaonan asked nervously at this time. This. Boss Luo took out the slate fragments from the small bag and smiled. I picked it up on the road. It seems to have broken off from something. I thought it was interesting, so I kept it, thinking if I could find something else in the future. I didn't expect Lady Nan to find it. By the way, Lady Nan, you haven't told me what you're doing here. I'm here to. Nan Xiaonan glanced at Boss Luo's small bag again. Finally, she gritted her teeth and took out the two fragments she hid. She smiled embarrassedly and said, If I say, I'm here to deliver a package to you, will you believe me? It took me a lot of effort to find these two, ########PS, 7784. Chapter 1812. Looking at Nan Xiaonan's pitiful and aggrieved expression, Boss Luo could not help but laugh. but he did not accept the 2 slate fragments. "Mr. Luo, what are you doing?" "Lady Nan, since you've found the fragments, why don't we cooperate and search for them together?" "Cooperate?" "Yes." Boss Luo nodded. "Besides, I only have 1 piece here, and you have 2 pieces. Logically speaking, even if I have to give it to you, I should give it to you, who has more. This seems to be the principle of the big eating the small." "Oh, the big eating the small, is this how you understand it?" She subconsciously looked at the fragments in Boss Luo's hand. At this time, it seemed that as long as she asked for it, he would give it to her. But was it really so easy to open her mouth? This was not as simple as opening her legs casually, was it? Or could it be that Mr. Luo did not care about these at all? The academic witch of her subworld was thinking rapidly. Her years of roaming the void were equivalent to her years of being single. It was not that she had never seen fierce people in the dimensional crevice, but there were only a few who could press the will of a subworld on the floor. And even if she met one, she could not be friends with such a fierce person at her level. Fierce people of that level all had terrifying plans. If they were not facing an entire subworld, they were facing a large number of void-strong people. People like her, at her peak, could only barely be considered as a first-class immortal. The distance between her and the top was like the gap between a gay man and a lesbian. If that's the case, Nan Xiaonan quickly made up her mind, cooperation is not a problem. "Mr. Luo, after collecting these fragments, let's share the profits equally, okay?" She knew that these fierce people of the void had a characteristic, which was that they did not take advantage of others easily. They were more rational in doing things. It was difficult to get close to them, but if you found a way to get close, they were very reliable allies. Sometimes, Nan Xiaonan could not help but secretly think that if she was not a lone traveler in the dimensional crevice, when she was involved by the spatial fluctuations and was about to fall into this subworld, would there be someone who could help her, and she would not be in such a situation now? Split equally? Boss Luo looked at the short-haired woman in front of him with great interest. He felt that she might look better with a pair of glasses. "Yes." Nan Xiaonan nodded. "You can't take advantage of me, but I can't take advantage of you either, right? If we can split it equally, then no one owes anyone anything. Isn't that good?" "Not bad." Boss Luo smiled faintly, then his gaze fell on the celebration venue. While they were talking, Dr. Gores and the others were still fighting for their lives. Nan Xiaonan was deep in thought at this time, and suddenly said, "It seems that Mr. Luo has directed a good play. It wasn't me." Luochu shook his head at this time, and then said casually, "But maybe it's also me. Maybe I thought so unintentionally. Lady Nan, you've been walking in the cracks between dimensions for such a long time. Have you heard of fate?" "Fate?" Nan Xiaonan frowned subconsciously. "I don't know if Mr. Luo's fate refers to the development process of the subworld, or the fate in the void." "The fate?" It sounded like he was referring to someone, not something. Boss Luo said calmly at this time, "What do you think?" Nan Xiaonan couldn't figure out Boss Luo's meaning, so she thought for a while and said, "Generally speaking, the fate of the subworld is fixed to the development process of the subworld. Usually, if we can reach the scope of the world's will, we can analyze the so-called future of the entire subworld through its core. Because this is arranged like a set script. With Mr. Luo's means, he shouldn't just refer to such a simple script." Boss Luo didn't make a sound. After Captain Malik's second transformation, his strength instantly increased a lot. At this time, the new follower of Mr. Varley, Cade Riley, had to use his power to fight, and the battle became lively. "Is this the so-called dark transformation?" Nan Xiaonan glanced casually, muttered, and then said seriously, "I think the fate that Mr. Luo is referring to should be the one in the void. It's called fate, but it should be the incarnation of fate. There is a legend that the incarnation of fate can even control the life of all creatures in the cracks between dimensions, and can also change their lives. Many powerful beings in the void are looking for fate, wanting to change their fate. Mr. Luo, are you also interested in fate? Now I am. Boss Luo said softly. Nan Xiaonan blinked. What the hell is now? But she quickly shook her head. These powerful beings in the void were all mysterious. On the other hand, if they weren't mysterious, they wouldn't be called powerful beings in the void. Right. Nan Xiaonan thought for a while and said, when I entered the roaring forest, I accidentally found the forbidden area, and then I got the method to find the remaining fragments from there. It was a guy who was sealed here who told me. His name is Big Stone, but I'm afraid this is just a fake name. Mr. Luo is very knowledgeable. I don't know if you have any opinions on this matter, or if you have heard of something similar and think of something like that? Big Stone. Yes, he said he was pressed under a big stone. Because it was too long ago, he forgot his original name, so he simply called himself Big Stone. Could it be a monkey? Boss Luo couldn't help but smile. Monkey? Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but open her mouth. What monkey? Nothing. Boss Luo said at this time, Lady Nan, your captain seems to be in a bad situation. Aren't you going to help? Nan Xiaonan shrugged and said, Mr. Luo, don't you think this is a good thing? This guy's master is the owner of the castle. If he dies here, the outside of the chessboard should be very interesting, right? It seems that if you want to team up with Lady Nan, you have to be careful. Boss Luo looked at her at this time. Nan Xiaonan's face changed slightly, and immediately said, I'm just a poor person who has no one to rely on, wandering alone in the void. I really don't have any intention of harming people. But even if I don't have any intention of harming people, I have to have a little bit of self-protection. She stretched out 2 fingers and pinched a distance of about 3 millimeters. It's really just a little bit. Is this snack delicious? Boss Luo directly changed the topic. Mr. Luo, do you want some too? Lady Nan directly took it over, and immediately took out 2 bottles with a sweet smell of alcohol from who knows where, and directly put it on the guardrail. Snacks and alcohol, there was an internal smell. Oh, it's almost time. Boss Luo suddenly said at this time. Nan Xiaonan subconsciously asked, What's almost time? Boss Luo indifferently said at this time, It's almost time to do it again. What? This battle is very difficult, don't be careless. Dr. Gores took the opportunity to meet up with Tina and Sneeve. But the battle between Cadillac and the mutated Captain Malik was something they couldn't intervene for the time being. Cadillac's new profession not only had cool skills, but also a large area of effect. As for Captain Malik, after he mutated, his roots inserted into the ground and then suddenly shot out from the ground, which was impossible to guard against. Where's our captain? Tina was a little injured. At this time, she covered her left shoulder and frowned. I don't know, but logically speaking, with such a large area of effect, it's impossible not to notice. Dr. Jules quickly speculated, maybe he saw Cardil and hid consciously. Did you see that? The Cardil that came back is obviously targeting that guy with the surname Luo. This shadow magic attack is too terrifying. He's probably worried that he might not be able to deal with it. But I guess he may be hiding nearby. If it were me, I would probably wait for Cadillac and Malik to fight to a certain extent, and after both sides are injured, then kill and directly kill a wave of people. Sneeve didn't listen to Dr. Gore's reasonable speculation, but his eyes were fixed on the battle between Malik and Cadillac. At this time, Dr. Gores suddenly activated the skill to move forward, turned into a shadow, and went around the battle point. He was approaching the girl who was going to be sacrificed on the mountain as a sacrifice, the youngest daughter of old Eric's family. What does he want to do? Sneeve frowned at this time, but it was too late to stop him. Not far away, when Dr. Gores, who turned into a shadow, arrived, he saw the sacrificial girl lying on the ground. Her legs were stretched out and pressed by the fallen planks, and she was trying to push the planks away with all her strength. Let me help you. Dr. Gores appeared like a prince with a bright smile on his face. He lifted the planks on the ground with both hands, and without waiting for the sacrificial girl to react, Dr. Gores directly carried her by the waist and jumped out. The landing point was behind a half-collapsed house wall. Are you okay? Dr. Gores put down the sacrificial girl and stretched out his hand to tidy up her messy hair. You're so stupid. Do you think becoming a sacrifice can solve the problem? You don't know that I came here for you. Do you think I'll just watch you be sent to the temple? I can't do that. Dr. Gores looked like he was heartbroken. Maybe you don't know, from the first time I saw you, your appearance has been engraved in my heart. I know that even if I'm given 100 years, or even 1,000 years, I won't be touched like this again. Because even if I find you in time, that person won't be you. I don't want to give up, so I'm here. He looked at the sacrificial girl in front of him, stretched out his hand, and gently lifted the veil of the sacrificial girl. I don't care about any punishment, and I don't care if I offend the gods, I only want. Hey, who are you? The veil was lifted. Appearing in front of Dr. Gores was an elf girl with tears in her eyes, a few small freckles on her face, and a pair of particularly plump lips. Ah! The moment the veil was lifted, the elf girl exclaimed, and then hugged Dr. Gores tightly, sobbing, I know! I know! I saw your heroic appearance when you appeared, and your courage to challenge the oracle for me. You got injured for me. I saw it all. Although I don't know you, I know it. You must have been hiding in a corner, looking at me affectionately all the time. Why are you so silly? Why don't you show up in front of me and let me know your feelings? I'm going to die because of your courage and your affection. Please take me away, even if I have to face the punishment of the gods. Aren't you Mayfair? Dr. Gores wanted to push the elf girl away, but unexpectedly, the elf girl hugged him tightly like an octopus. Mayfair? Who is Mayfair? The elf girl grabbed Dr. Gores' face. I'm Lena, the bride you want to take away. As she said, her plump, fiery red lips kept approaching Dr. Gores. Die! Uppercut. The sacrifice girl Lena's chin was severely injured, and her whole body was directly hit into the sky, and then fell to the ground with a puff sound and fainted. Dr. Gores fiercely wiped his face, and then looked over with a pale face. What's going on? Why isn't it Mayfair? Could it be that my conjecture was wrong? At this moment, Dr. Gores suddenly heard a sound behind him. He was instinctively shocked, and at this moment something bloomed in his chest. Blood flower. His chest had been pierced through, and the murder weapon was still stirring in his heart. Dr. Gures wanted to scream out loud. He wanted to turn around and look at the attacker, but at this time, his vision had already begun to spin. It was his head that flew out directly. His head had been directly cut off and fell to the ground. People said that if the speed was fast enough, the consciousness was still active at the moment when the head was cut off, and perhaps he could still think. The last thing Dr. Gores saw was a figure wearing the uniform of the temple guards. Not far from this figure, he saw another figure. That was Mayfair, who was wearing the sacrifice clothes and lying unconscious on the ground at this time. The figure who cut off his head turned around at this time, and walked towards Mayfair with a bloody weapon dripping with blood. His vision turned black, and he could no longer hear or see anything. Then, his eyes lit up. The mottled sunlight scattered in front of his eyes. It was this familiar place where Mayfair, who was shot by the arrow, was before. Familiar teammates. This reincarnation is man-made. Dr. Gores blurted out. Hashtag as usual. Chapter 1813. What you're saying is that no matter how many times it happens, if Mayfair doesn't do nothing and allow time to pass, someone will definitely make a move in the dark, kill her, and then allow time to go back to the past. That's right, Dr. Gores said seriously, Although I didn't see with my own eyes whether the person who tried to assassinate me killed Mayfair or not, according to the situation after you came back this time, you also encountered time reversal shortly after I died. In other words, Mayfair died, and she died in the hands of the person who attacked me. Then what should we do now? Sneeve thought for a while and said, the person who ambushed me most likely knows about the secret of Mayfair's time reversal. He might even be the person who shot an arrow in the deep forest and injured her. It seems like the key to unraveling the mystery of time reversal lies with the person who ambushed me. But you didn't see its appearance clearly in the end. It's not clear whether it was a man or a woman. Tina shook her head. There are at least tens of thousands of elves in the entire elf tribe. How are we going to investigate? It's very simple. Dr. Gores suddenly opened his palm at Boss Luo. Let's do it again. The person who attacked me will definitely appear at the celebration venue. So, give me the invisibility scroll. Boss Luo blinked. Dr. Gores said quickly, time has been reversed, and the things that were used have returned. I've already checked. The potions that I used have all recovered. Don't tell me that the invisibility scroll isn't there. There is. Boss Luo smiled. He didn't expect Dr. Gores to say this. He took out the invisibility scroll and handed it to Dr. Gores. There's another question. Will Cardil appear again this time? And how much does he know? Sneeve suddenly frowned and said, he will definitely appear. Dr. Gores said with certainty, it seems that defeating Malik, who has turned into an oracle, is something that Cardil must do. This may be an order from Mr. Varley. However, the battle was not over yet. Mayfair had already been killed. Therefore, Cardil will definitely appear. Then let's try again. Once again, the follower team found Mayfair unconscious because of the arrow. Dr. Gores skillfully treated the wound of the elf lady without thinking. Alright, now we just need to wait for her to wake up and follow the plot. Dr. Gores washed the blood off his hands. When Mayfair woke up again, he looked at Dr. Gores and the others in shock and panic. Finally, he returned to the treehouse and opened the diary. It turns out that this is the third time. The elf girl had a complicated expression at this time. She said apologetically, I'm sorry to drag you into this. By the way, how did I come back last time? Is it time or am I dead? Time is up. Dr. Gores said quickly at this time. After we entered the village, we couldn't find any clues. Then the time was up, so we came back again. But the doctor did not say anything about the celebration. She even disappeared before the celebration began. She might have replaced Xiao Lina to pretend to be the sacrificial girl, and she might have been killed in the end. Everyone understood what Dr. Gores meant. He wanted to make sure that Mayfair, who had woken up this time, would do the same thing as the last time. He wanted to make sure that the murderer would appear at the venue and take the opportunity to catch him. Mayfair nodded and began to write something in the diary. Then, she said, if this is the case, that is to say, we can't find any useful clues in the village, right? Not necessarily. Dr. Gores said, after all the elves in the village came out during the celebration. We only experienced it once, so it's normal that we didn't find anything in a short night. So, if possible, Miss Mayfair, we plan to try a few more times. Are you willing to help us? The elf girl quickly said, of course. You all got into such trouble because of me. How can I leave you alone? Tell me what to do, and I'll do it seriously. This was the attitude he wanted. Dr. Gores smiled at this time. Then, Tina, help us with the makeup. Witchcraft makeup bag. Soon, they left the treehouse again and walked into the elf tribe. After Boss Luo and his team left the treehouse for a while, Cardil and Nan Xiaonan came here. What did you say? If we can't defeat the oracle, we'll keep repeating today? Nan Xiaonan listened to the information provided by Cardil in surprise. That's what Mr. Varley told me. Cardil nodded. At first, I didn't believe it, until we came back here again. At this time, Nan Xiaonan's face slightly changed. She quietly touched her pocket. The second fragment of the slate that she had found in the treehouse had indeed disappeared. However, when she used the visualization method, she could clearly sense that the second slate fragment was in the treehouse. Are you afraid? Cardil suddenly looked at Nan Xiaonan. Lady Nan shook her head. There's nothing to be afraid of. Since you said that we only need to defeat the Oracle, then we only need to find a way to defeat him. Mr. Varley should have told you how to defeat him, right? Cardil didn't say a word, and even stared at Nan Xiaonan. When I was fighting against the Oracle in the celebration, where were you hiding? Why didn't you appear? Lady Nan shrugged and said, Brother, I'm just a LV2 commoner who doesn't even have a profession. Do you think I can survive that kind of battle? If I appeared, wouldn't I be a burden to you? Cardil sneered. Look at my sincere eyes. Cardil shook his head. If there's nothing else, let's go. We still need to enter the elf tribe. Don't waste time here. Nan Xiaonan was stunned. If that's the case, why did you bring me here? Wouldn't it be better to enter the elf tribe directly from the beginning? I need to verify Varley's words, Cardil said indifferently. Since you've verified it, if there's a next time, you don't need to come here again. If there's a next time? Lady Nan frowned. What do you mean? Are you saying that you may not be able to defeat the Oracle? Or, even if you defeat him, you may come back again? Your brain is not bad, but unfortunately, your strength can't help at all. Cardil waved his hand. If you come back again, we'll talk about it. Of course, you can stay here if you want. If it weren't for the team contract, I wouldn't be willing to act with you. I wonder if Mr. Luo is also trapped in this time loop. Wait, would such a big boss of the void be easily trapped by such a time loop? Wait for me. Nan Xiaonan saw that Cardil was about to leave without waiting for her. She quickly stopped him. Brother, I'll go up to relieve myself. I'll be done soon. Cardil frowned and said with slight annoyance, Didn't you already go up last time? I still have a lot of water. The scholarly witch in his subworld thought that since she had already shamelessly done it once, she might as well do it again. Nan Xiaonan quickly climbed up the treehouse and found the diary in the box in the corner again. The stone fragment. How could this be? If I can't pass this level, I will never be able to take this fragment away? Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but frown. It seemed that it was not easy to collect all these fragments. For example, the one in Mr. Luo's hand? In the elf tribe, in the tea house of the village, everyone sat around a table and listened to the conversations of the other guests in the tea house. They began to learn that Mayfair, the sacrificial offering, had secretly escaped, and the little daughter of old Eric was temporarily replaced as the new sacrificial offering. The celebration was going to be held in the evening. Miss Mayfair, are you not feeling well? You look a bit pale. Tina pretended not to know and looked at the elf girl who was holding the teacup and staring blankly. No, nothing. Mayfair shook her head at this time. Maybe it's because no one recognized me when I entered the village. It feels a bit strange. Remember, you are wearing makeup now. Tina smiled and said, Eat something. No matter what, your body will still be exhausted. There is still a long time before the end of today. You need to replenish your strength. True. Mayfair nodded and then began to eat the food on the table. Especially the dessert, this elf girl ate the most. She almost ate half of it alone. Tina couldn't help but smile and said, Miss Mayfair, you seem to like desserts very much. Mayfair glanced at Boss Luo's eyes and nodded. Yes, I like desserts the most, especially this dessert. When my mother was still alive, she often made it for me. By the way, I may have eaten a bit too much. I need to go to the washroom. Tina glanced at Dr. Gores and nodded. I will go with you. I also want to go there. Mayfair nodded. After they left, Dr. Gores picked up a piece of dessert from Mayfair's mouth and ate it. Mr. Sneeve sneered at this time. What's wrong? You are used to drinking blood. When did you change your taste? Aren't you afraid of getting a stomachache? Dr. Gores said angrily. I have the body of a servant. My taste and digestive system are ordinary people. Speaking of which, this thing is too sweet. I can eat so much and my teeth are not rotten. Elves are really a magical race. I can't eat it. Boss Luo smiled at this time, and also took a small piece to taste. Speaking of which, why didn't our captain go to the street this time to deal with those passionate elf girls? Dr. Gores narrowed his eyes. Boss Luo said casually, I think it is better to stay in front of you this time. Dr. Gores shrugged, then stood up and looked at Sneeve. I will follow Mayfair. After that, Dr. Gores disappeared in front of the two. He used the invisibility scroll given by Boss Luo this time. After waiting for a while, when he felt that Dr. Gores should be far away, Sneeve suddenly looked at Boss Luo and asked, Did you see Cardil before coming back this time? What do you want to say, Mr. Sneeve? Boss Luo asked curiously. Sneeve said in a deep voice, As I said, Varley, this scoundrel, won't let you go easily. You also saw that the newly returned Cardil was obviously developed to deal with you. I told you to find more items that can resist magic damage. Look at it now. Before we could prepare much, Cardil has made a comeback. Do you want me to kill Mr. Cardil again? Boss Luo asked directly. Mr. Sneeve clenched the teacup at this time. Yes. As long as Cardil dies this time, Varley outside can't escape the punishment of the punishment roulette again. But it's a pity that it's useless. According to the current situation, if there is no way to solve the mystery of time reversal, even if Cardil is killed here, it won't cause any real harm to Varley. I'm really unwilling to accept this. It's such a good opportunity. Boss Luo suddenly glanced at Mr. Sneeve's shoulder, then smiled and said, In this case, let's work together to find a way to solve this mystery, Mr. Sneeve. Don't worry, Sneeve said seriously. Even if I die, I won't let you be in danger. You're the only hope to defeat Cardil and let Varley face the punishment roulette. This is an unusually heavy responsibility. Luochu shook his head and said, Mr. Sneeve, have you ever thought that maybe I can't help you? No. Sneeve seemed to be possessed. Absolutely not. I'm sure. Varley will never allow himself to fail. He suffered a loss in your hands once, so no matter what, he won't let Cardil let you go. Cardil will definitely deal with you. You can't avoid the battle with Cardil again. So, either you die or he dies. You only have one way to go. It walked away, Boss Luo suddenly said at this time. What walked away? Sneeve was stunned subconsciously. He looked around and found no one, so he couldn't help but frown. At this moment the maid, Miss Tina, walked back slowly. As expected, Mayfair has gone missing again. The doctor is probably following behind her. What were you guys talking about just now? Nothing, Boss Luo said casually. We were just discussing what to do next. Boss Luo glanced outside as he said this. He didn't see the figure in the cloak that appeared and cut off all the flowers last time. I'll go out for a while. Boss Luo suddenly stood up and said. Where are you going? Sneeve and Tina looked at Luocho at the same time. Boss Luo said with a reason that Sneeve couldn't refute, Since Mr. Cardil will appear again, I think it's better for me to hide and observe him. Besides, I also left last time. If I don't do the same thing this time, the following celebration may not be the same as last time. Tina frowned and wanted to say something, but Sneeve already agreed. You go. Protect yourself. Then, I'll go out for a walk, see you in the evening. Tina found that it was useless to stop them, so she had to be silent. After Luocho and Sneeve left the tea-house, the maid quietly avoided the staff and left the tea-house. The reason was, she didn't have the money to pay the bill. The lights in the village began to dim. Boss Luo came to the same water cart room. It was quiet and empty here, only the sound of running water could be heard. This time, it's Mayfair who doesn't like sweets. Boss Luo smiled and walked out of the water cart room. The next step is to confirm the back door of the temple. The clues are almost there. Hashtag PS. 78/84. Chapter 1814. After leaving the tea house, Dr. Gores successfully followed behind Mayfair because of the invisibility scroll. It had to be said that the invisibility scroll was indeed a great tracking tool. Mayfair didn't find anything along the way and quickly walked through the village. Soon, Mayfair came to a house guarded by guards. This was the place where the sacrificial candidate had to stay before the ceremony began. That was the place where Chiao Lina, who temporarily replaced Murphy as the sacrificial candidate, bathed and dressed up. The elderly nannies in the village were responsible for the whole city and prohibited any male from approaching. At this time, Mayfair quietly knocked out an old nanny and put on her clothes. She lowered her head and quickly mixed into the house, becoming one of the nannies who groomed the sacrificial candidate. Dr. Gores had been watching coldly from the side. If he guessed correctly before coming back this time, Mayfair should have sneaked in here after disappearing from the tea house and planned to exchange himself with Chiao Lina. When Dr. Gores died, besides Chiao Lina, he saw Mayfair wearing sacrificial clothing on the ground. It was the best proof. And this time, Mayfair sneaked into the house under his surveillance. It was already the best proof. So, was the murderer already here at this time? Last time, the murderer might have found out that Mayfair wanted to exchange Chiao Lina, so he secretly manipulated Mayfair to make sure that the one he confessed to last time at the ceremony was still Chiao Lina, and not Mayfair as he guessed. Come on, the guy who killed me. This time I will definitely catch your foxtail. But at this time, what Dr. Gores didn't expect was that after Mayfair pretended to be an old nanny and stayed in the house for a while, she quietly left here and quickly left the village. At this time, the sky was not dark yet. There was still a short time before the ceremony began in the evening. What's going on? Where is she going? Dr. Gores found that things were far from what he thought. He had no choice but to continue following. At this time, he found that Mayfair was going to the temple on the mountain. Going to the temple was not on the road of the trial takers, but on the continent. Dr. Gores found that Mayfair's speed was unusually fast. He almost couldn't catch up with her. By the time Mephistopheles officially ascended the main gate of the temple on the mountain, Dr. Gores was already panting heavily. What surprised him was that when Mephistopheles stood at the main gate of the temple, the guards did not stop her when they saw her. Not only did they not stop her, but they even respectfully called her Vice-Captain. At this time, seeing Mayfair walk directly into the temple, Dr. Gores' mind was in a mess. If Mayfair was the Vice-Captain, wasn't she the one he met when he was directly killed by Mr. Varley in the temple for the first time? Suddenly, an idea flashed in Dr. Gores' mind. He looked back at the sky that was about to darken and suddenly shivered. He quickly bypassed the gate of the temple and hurriedly went to the back of the temple. He quickly came to this place. Dr. Gores found that in so many backtracking processes, he had never come here in person. But he knew what would happen here. This was what he learned from Boss Luo. Captain Malik would be here. In order to provide for the monster goddess in the inner hall of the temple, he would quietly kill a guard of the temple. Ah! After a stifled scream, the guard of the temple died tragically at the hands of Captain Malik. He dragged the dead guard away, and then quickly walked in through the back door of the temple. Dr. Gores was standing here openly at this time. Because of the invisibility scroll, he saw everything clearly. This was indeed the same as the information provided by Luocio. But that time, Luocio and Mayfair should have seen it while hiding behind the totem pole, but this time there shouldn't be anyone behind the totem pole, because they didn't take the road of trial this time. So, Captain Malik put on the black armor after killing the guard and went down the mountain as the oracle to supervise the ceremony. Dr. Gores muttered at this time, "It seems that the time matches. But it doesn't mean anything." The doctor was startled at this time. He saw a figure quietly walking out of the totem pole at this time. Her face was pale with anger and hatred. She even trembled because of fear. Mayfair is also Mayfair? Dr. Gores looked at this scene in a daze. At this time, Mayfair walked out from behind the totem pole and finally chose to open the back door of the temple while hesitating. Dr. Gores still couldn't recover from the shock. What's going on? There is also a Mayfair here. Are there two Mayfair at the same time? Dr. Gores was startled, and without thinking, he chased after Mayfair, who saw Captain Malik kill the guard. He didn't need to deliberately hide himself because of the power of the scroll. Dr. Gores easily followed behind Mayfair at this time, until they reached the door of the inner temple. Dr. Gores at this time saw with his own eyes how Captain Malik was scolded and even beaten out of the inner temple and hit the wall after sending the dead guard into the inner temple. Then, how he found Mayfair, who was hiding on the door, and saw this time. Captain Malik didn't expose Mayfair, who was hiding here, and even signaled her to leave with him. They went all the way to the baptism room in silence, but they didn't know that there was an invisible figure following them silently along the way. In the baptism room. I heard that you secretly escaped earlier today. Captain Malik frowned and suddenly said, "Since you have already escaped, why did you come back?" "I'm back, isn't that what you want?" At this moment, Mayfair sneered and said, "Otherwise, where would you go to find another living sacrifice and deliver it to the gods, to that monster? A living one, right?" At this moment, Captain Malik drew his sword and directly attacked Mephistopheles. Mephistopheles was no match for Captain Malik and was knocked unconscious. Then, Captain Malik brought Mephistopheles into his room and trapped him on the stone bed. Dr. Gores had been in this room all this time. He looked at Captain Malik, who was absent-mindedly looking at the coffin made of luminous stone in the corner. He wanted to open the coffin several times to take a look, but he restrained himself. Until Captain Malik stood up and left the room again, Dr. Gores speculated that it might be time, so Captain Malik was preparing to incarnate as an oracle and appear at the celebration. The door had been locked, and it seemed that it couldn't be opened from the inside. Dr. Gores tried several times and temporarily gave up the idea of opening the door. He came before the stone bed and looked at the unconscious Mayfair. He muttered to himself for a long time. He still couldn't sort out his thoughts at this time. This made Dr. Gores a little irritable. He walked impatiently in the room and unconsciously came to the front of the coffin made of luminous stone. He didn't know what was special about this luminous stone coffin that could make Captain Malik so fascinated, so he couldn't help but reach out to open it. Click! The door was unlocked. Dr. Gores was startled subconsciously, but thinking that he was still invisible at this time, he subconsciously calmed down. But soon, Dr. Gores was not calm anymore. Who did he see come in through the door? He actually saw the leader of his own follower team. Luocio. This guy really opened the door with the key, he didn't lie? When Boss Luo opened the door of Captain Malik's room with the key and walked in, Dr. Gores subconsciously shuddered. Why Luocio appeared here? Dr. Gores seemed to have 1,000 questions in his mind. But when he thought that Boss Luo couldn't see him at this time, Dr. Gores narrowed his eyes and moved quietly. He raised his left middle finger to Boss Luo with a sneer on his face, and went around to the back of Boss Luo. You didn't expect it, right? I'm behind you. You lied to me once, twice, you should at least give me some interest, right? You guessed right, I can stab people in the back. No, this guy has the sacred suit. Dr. Gores couldn't help but stop the dagger that was about to be pushed out. So desperate, the opportunity to stab someone in the back was right in front of him. By the way, Mr. Gores, did you find anything? At this time, Boss Luo suddenly opened his mouth. Dr. Gores was stunned at first, then he exclaimed, You can see me? Yes, I saw you when I came in. Boss Luo turned around at this time and smiled slightly. How can you see me? I'm not invisible. You mean the invisibility scroll? Boss Luo said casually. It has a time limit. Don't you know? What the F***? It must be that when I was thinking irritably, I didn't care about it and thought that the invisibility effect was still there, so… Backstab. The doctor had a rather stiff smile on his face at this time. After swallowing his saliva, he picked up his dagger. If I say that I'm actually joking with you, you'll believe me. Mr. Gores, you seem to be in a good mood. Boss Luo smiled as if he didn't care about this matter. By the way, Doctor, did you find anything new on your way here? Dr. Gores looked at Boss Luo in surprise, then he calmed down. Yes, I found 2 Mayfair. The one I followed in the tea house, all the way up the mountain and then into the temple. She is indeed the vice-captain of the temple. I saw the guard respectfully salute her with my own eyes, so I can't be wrong. As for the one lying on the bed now, to be honest, I can't explain it, but one thing is for sure, there are indeed 2 different Mayfair here. This doesn't make sense. At the beginning of today, the Mayfair we saved in the forest was the one I followed all the way up the mountain. However, according to the situation when we first walked the path of the trial-taker, the Mayfair at that time should be the one I found at the back door of the temple, the one lying here. Unless… Mr. Gores seems to have thought of something. Boss Luo smiled slightly. Dr. Gores suddenly raised his head. Unless there are indeed 2 Mayfair, there are 2 Mayfair who can backtrack time. We are actually constantly jumping between the 2 Mayfairs that have been turned back in time. No, this doesn't make sense. If there are 2 different Mayfair who can backtrack time, they can't appear at the same time. What's wrong? I must have overlooked something. What exactly is it? Boss Luo walked to the side of the stone bed and looked at the sleeping elf girl. He suddenly said, Mr. Gores, do you remember what you discovered when you first walked the path of the trial-taker? Discovered? What did we discover? Dr. Gores frowned and said subconsciously, the problem of the 3rd level, no. It's the trace left by Gerald. I understand now. Dr. Gores patted his head and hurriedly walked forward. The path of the trial-taker. This path may allow the 1st Mayfair who escaped as a sacrifice to enter the time of the 2nd Mayfair, who is the vice-captain of the temple guards. When we walked the path of the trial-taker for the first time, we came to the time of the 2nd vice-captain Mayfair. Then we backtracked and jumped directly to the time of the 2nd vice-captain Mayfair. But this time, the 1st Mayfair will definitely walk the path of the trial-taker and come to the time of the 2nd Mayfair. No, it's still not right. Logically speaking, we didn't walk the path of the trial-taker for the 3rd time, so we shouldn't appear in the time of the 2nd Mayfair. If that's the case, then she wouldn't have walked the path of the trial-taker. In other words, in the previous today, Mayfair shouldn't have discovered that Captain Malik killed his companion, But what? But we still went back in time. Dr. Gillis thought about it and said, we've returned to the original starting point, but we've switched to the 2nd vice-captain Mayfair's time reversal. From the looks of it, our hypothesis of jumping back and forth between 2 different Mayfairs should be correct. But last time, today, the 1st Mayfair didn't enter the temple. He didn't enter the temple. He didn't enter the temple. If he didn't enter the temple, the 1st Mayfair wouldn't have died in the hands of Mr. Varley. However, and then she died, didn't she? Yes, she's still dead, but who killed her? Who's the murderer? The murderer is the 2nd Mayfair. Boss Luo said slowly, after we cut off your head, Mr. Gores, we will kill Mayfair, who is wearing the sacrificial costume. That will be the 2nd vice-captain Mayfair. How do you know? Dr. Gores asked subconsciously. Boss Luo blinked, because I saw it with my own eyes. Oh, so that's how it is. Dr. Gores nodded and immediately said angrily, you just watched as I was killed? How could he do that? ######PS. As usual. Chapter 1815. If Dr. Gores looked at a woman with anger, it would be sorrowful. Of course, it might be because the maid Tina's makeup artist made Dr. Gores look very beautiful. Boss Luo said indifferently. I can't say that I didn't do anything. After all, even if I died, I would return to the original time. Mr. Gores, you have to believe that I did this just to find out the truth. You didn't die, of course you can say that. Dr. Gores didn't want to let it go, so he glared at Boss Luo angrily. I got this on the way as an apology. Boss Luo opened his palm. An emerald green gem quietly appeared in his palm. Dr. Gores sneered. What? You think you can just give me 1 or 2 stones? We are all adults, don't be so naive. You're right. Boss Luo nodded. You think this gemstone can make up for your mistake? I underestimated Mr. Gores, I'm sorry. Damage transfer. This gemstone is the god of wars, Aldic's heart? Dr. Gores was stunned, then he grabbed the green gemstone from Boss Luo's palm and looked at it. It's really Aldic's heart. Mr. Gores, didn't you say you didn't want to accept it? Dr. Jirl snorted at this time and frowned. I've thought about it. Fighting with you now won't help the current situation at all. Remember, I'm not forgiving you, nor is it because of this gem. I just want to clear this elf tribe. I don't want to be trapped in this place all the time. Dr. Gores said as he stuffed the gemstone into his pocket. If he could clear the final stage of the chessboard, he would be able to take away a limited amount of the game's rewards. This gemstone, if he could take it away, it would be a priceless treasure in the modern world. Dr. Gores didn't care about professional abilities. After all, these professional abilities were not as powerful as his original strength as a vampire. If he could directly enter chessboard as a vampire, he could beat up this smiling guy in front of him. A 400-year-old vampire with power comparable to that of a high-ranking vampire nobleman? Mr. Gores, you're so generous. Boss Luo nodded and continued. Now that you know that the person who killed you in today was the second Mayfair, what do you think about the current situation? Dr. Gores said. I suspect that the second Mayfair is the Mayfair who can keep all the memories of today. You see, in this today, we are in the backtracking time of the second Mayfair, but this time she pretended to be the first Mayfair and hid the fact that she was the vice-captain of the Temple Guards. This is proof. And you also proved that the one who killed me last time was the second vice-captain, Mephistopheles. Since the second vice-captain wanted to kill the first Mephistopheles, that means that the person who killed the first Mephistopheles in the forest that we've been investigating all this time is very likely to be Mephistopheles. The second vice-captain, Mephistopheles. Even the diary in the treehouse was written by the second vice-captain of the Temple Guards, Mayfair. Because she had always known about backtracking, she didn't need anyone to remind her. When she first wrote her diary, she already knew everything. Hence, she planned for the first Mephistopheles to investigate. But what was her motive for doing so? If you want to know the answer, it's actually very simple, Boss Luo suddenly said. Dr. Gores nodded. It's indeed very simple. As long as we catch the vice-captain of the Temple Guards, Mayfair and the person on the bed face each other, the truth will be revealed. Then what are we waiting for? The vice-captain of the Temple Guards, Mayfair, is now in the Temple Guards. With that, Dr. Gillis hurriedly pushed open the door, but Boss Luo didn't move at this time. What are you waiting for? Let's go. Boss Luo said seriously. Mr. Gores, I'll leave the vice-captain of the Mayfair to you. I think I should stay. Why? Boss Luo said seriously. Think about it, if you and I leave this place, it means that Miss Mayfair on the bed will be unsupervised. If something happens to her at this time, we won't be able to find out. What you said makes sense. Dr. Gores frowned and stared at Boss Luo. Do you really think so? Are you trying to do something else? Boss Luo shook his head and said, Mr. Gores, you see, I've already given you the invisibility scroll and the Aldic's heart. Don't you believe me? You want to run around? Dr. Jirl snorted and immediately closed the door. He put away the key and looked at the door that was firmly locked by the magic shackles. Suddenly, he sneered. Idiot. Do you really think you can make me trust you by just giving me a few things? Dr. Gores said, I'm Gores smart. After Dr. Gores locked the door and left, Boss Luo sat beside the stone bed and said softly, Miss Mayfair, don't you want to wake up? While he was speaking, the originally unconscious Mayfair on the bed suddenly opened her eyes. She looked at him in panic and said in a trembling voice, Who are you? Why are you here? What's the relationship between you and Captain Malik? Are you also an accomplice of the monster in the inner palace? Boss Luo used his sword to cut the shackles on the bed. Mayfair jumped up as soon as she was free. There was a weapon hanging on the wall. Captain Malik's weapon. From jumping off the bed to taking out the weapon and pointing it at Boss Luo, Mayfair did it all in one breath. Tell me, what do you want to do to me? I don't want to do anything to you. Boss Luo shook his head. But if you want to know what happened, you can go and take a look. Follow Mr. Gores, maybe you can find the answer. Boss Luo threw a scroll to Mayfair. Use your own eyes. She took the scroll and opened her mouth, saying subconsciously, Have I seen you before? Who knows? Boss Luo smiled casually. But if you don't go now, maybe you won't be able to catch up. Mephistopheles gritted her teeth, her face full of hesitation. In the end, she still chose to open the scroll and instantly disappeared into thin air. Boss Luo could hear some light footsteps. First, they approached him and stayed by his side for a while, then they hurried out of the room. At this time, Boss Luo said softly, I've seen you here, but you forgot. In the tribe, in the village. It was almost time for the celebration. The young girl Xiao Lina, who was the sacrifice, had finished dressing up and walked out of the house. Before going to the square, she would be escorted to the parade and be worshipped by the elves. People came and went on the streets, and the elves cheered. In the crowd, Mr. Sneeve wore a wide hat and silently followed the parade. If Cade has arrived at this time, where will he be? Will he also pay attention to the parade? His eyes were like those of a venomous snake, and he was carefully searching for his prey. But at this moment, his shoulder was silently patted. Sneeve couldn't help but be surprised. When he saw that it was Tina, he was slightly relieved. But he didn't feel good at this time. Even though he was in the chessboard world, as a servant, he couldn't sense Tina's presence. If he was outside the chessboard world, he was just an ordinary old man. However, he was facing a room full of high-level vampires. Of course, he was even more sure enough, the only hope for revenge was in chessboard. Only by finding a way to kill Wally's servant, could Wally taste the taste of failure through the punishment roulette. Mr. Sneeve, Tina will think that you are thinking of something bad with your eyes. Miss Maid narrowed her eyes at this time. I feel like I saw you when you were young, that night. You? Sneeve suddenly opened his eyes wide. Tina covered her mouth and laughed. Mr. Sneeve seems to be very reluctant to mention what happened that night. But that night, Mr. Sneeve was so happy. Without saying anything, Sneeve put his hand on the sharp sword and was about to pull it out, but Tina suddenly disappeared. When she reappeared, it was the next moment behind Sneeve. She leaned close to Sneeve's ear and whispered, Instead of killing me here, why don't you think about how to kill Cade here? Isn't it better? You. Mr. Sneeve suddenly loosened his grip on the weapon. Do you want to go to the venue of the grand ceremony? Miss Maid said with a chuckle. Sneeve took a deep breath, turned his head and walked into the crowd. That was the direction of the grand ceremony. On the top of a building in the long street, two figures were silently looking at the parade. Nan Xiaonan and Cade. Since your purpose is to defeat the Oracle, why don't you directly step into the temple and kill him? Instead, you want to wait for him to appear here? Nan Xiaonan squinted and asked, Isn't your profession known as one of the ultimate professions? One person can fight against 10 people. What do you know? Cade said indifferently, If I don't defeat him in the grand ceremony, it's meaningless. Why? Nan Xiaonan blinked her eyes and attacked with sparkling eyes. Why don't you reveal something? Anyway, we are temporarily out of contact with the master. If you say anything, Mr. Varley won't know. Why should I tell you? Cadillac couldn't help but sneer. Nan Shaunan said, think about it. This time, Mr. Varley killed your boss and your colleagues. Tell me, if you complete Mr. Varley's mission and successfully leave the chessboard, will he let you go or not? Cadillac kept silent and didn't show any expression. No one could tell if he was frightened or worried. Nan Shaunan said, if I were Mr. Wally, it would probably be more convenient to eliminate the root of the problem, right? After all, I don't know if the friendship between you and your unlucky boss and colleagues is deep enough for you to take revenge for them, right? Humph. Cardil still snorted softly. That's why I said big brother. Nan Shaunan said with a fawning expression, don't you think it's safer to have one more ally when we're surrounded by enemies? You're just a nobody under the castle chef. What can you do? Cadillac said disdainfully. Indeed, I can't deal with Mr. Varley, but I'm familiar with the castle's terrain. Nan Shaunan smiled and said, maybe it can help you have a chance to escape after leaving the chessboard? Come on, tell me a little and let me know what to do next. What's more, if I don't know anything and accidentally do something wrong, won't I ruin your good plans? Cadillac was silent at this time. After a while, he said slowly, I have to defeat the oracle in the ritual to wake up the goddess Gloria. Goddess Gloria? Nan Shaunan frowned. Then? Cadillac suddenly smiled and said, then I thought of a way to ensure that you won't make any mistakes in the next action and hinder me. What is it? Nan Shaunan was startled subconsciously. Cadillac suddenly waved his wand at this time. Dozens of black whips suddenly appeared under Nan Xiaonan's feet and directly tied her up. She couldn't move in an instant, and her body was pierced by these black whips until her flesh protruded. Brother, what do you want to do? Nan Xiaonan forced herself to be calm and said, if you like to tie me up, this method is not right? Otherwise, if you let me go, I'll have a lot of ways to tie you up. Will you be satisfied? If Mr. Varley didn't say that I can't hurt you and let Steward Lisa be punished, I will definitely kill you. Cadillac snorted at this time, you just stay here obediently. Don't worry about what will happen next. Just wait to pass the test and win. After saying that, Cade jumped and disappeared from the roof. Nan Shaunan struggled on the ground a few times like a caterpillar. She found that it was really difficult to untie, so she said thoughtfully, in order not to let Steward Lisa be punished, you didn't kill me. What the hell? Nan Shaunan quickly shook her head. Although she was tied up and thrown here at this time, she didn't panic. Because if it was like last time, Mr. Luo should come here soon. After all, this was the old place where she chatted with Mr. Luo last time. Don't panic. ######## PS. 79/84. Chapter 1816. Dr. Gores felt that he might be safe this time, but he still had to be more careful when walking in the temple. After thinking about it, he equipped the newly obtained gem and activated the sneak skill. It was a pity that the duration of the invisibility scroll had expired. Otherwise, it would have been more convenient. However, for such a powerful item like the invisibility scroll, Dr. Gores never thought that Boss Luo could drop a second invisibility scroll. The Hieron was neither large nor small. Fortunately, it was not Dr. Girth's first time to enter the Hieron. In the previous today, he had been captured by Captain Malik once. Although it was not a pleasant experience, in fact, it allowed him to understand the terrain inside the temple, especially the area near the inner temple. Based on his memory, Dr. Gores quickly found the room of the vice-captain, Mayfair, in the temple. He guessed that the vice-captain, Mayfair, should be in this room during this period. Then, the scene that was about to happen verified his guess. But what surprised Dr. Gores was that on the way to the vice-captain, Mayfair's room, he actually met the dangerous Captain Malik again. This time, Dr. Gores did not dare to be careless. He completely stopped breathing and remained motionless, completely hiding himself in the shadows of the passage. Until Captain Malik walked past as if he did not notice and knocked on the Vice-Captain Mayfair's door. This made Dr. Gores a little surprised. According to the current situation, this was the time when Captain Malik imprisoned the first Mayfair. Then, why did he still come to this room? Dr. Gores realized that he seemed to have overlooked some key things. However, at this time, the door slowly opened and Mayfair appeared. As the Vice-Captain, Mayfair, in his guess, was the second Mayfair who could turn back time. "What can I do for you, Captain Malik?" "Nothing. I just came to tell you that I'm about to go to the celebration." Listening to the conversation between Captain Malik and Vice-Captain Mayfair, Dr. Gores finally understood what was wrong. This Captain Malik did not mention that he had imprisoned the first Mayfair. It was as if he had never done such a thing before. He did not find it strange. He had clearly imprisoned Mephistopheles in the room, but why was he able to see another Mephistopheles outside? Or Captain Malik might know the existence of two Mayfair, so he was not shocked. Captain Malik also knew about the time travel of two Mayfair? However, how should I confirm this matter? Should I arrest him and interrogate him? He couldn't beat him. At this time, Dr. Gures felt as if there were a few ants dancing in his heart, making him feel itchy and extremely uncomfortable. He wished he could put on a suit of godly armor and really catch Captain Malik so that he could directly ask him to get to the bottom of it. But he knew that the most important thing this time was to capture the second Mephistopheles and confront the first Mephistopheles to reveal the truth of the matter. The main reason was because he felt that the second Mephistopheles could beat him. "How have you been recently?" "Very good." "Really?" They just silently looked at each other in front of the door. The atmosphere made Dr. Gores, who was sneaking on the side, feel strange. Especially this kind of familiar conversation between strangers. But at this time, Captain Malik suddenly stepped forward and directly pushed the second Mayfair into the room. The door of the room was then closed. So intense. Dr. Gores was startled. He quickly and quietly leaned in front of the door, putting his ear close to the door, trying to get more information. But he didn't expect that the moment his ear touched the door would open. Dr. Gores' posture at this time was quite strange. This was the posture of eavesdropping on the door, but the door was gone. Captain Malik was now standing in front of Dr. Gores. At this critical moment, Dr. Gores' nerves seemed to have been activated. With an unparalleled speed, the dagger popped out, and then directly stabbed at Captain Malik. He didn't think that he could defeat Captain Malik in this way. He only wanted to push him back a little so that he could escape. Unexpectedly, Captain Malik just stretched out his hand and directly grabbed his wrist holding the dagger, then pulled hard. In this way, Dr. Gores' body rushed forward in an instant. At the same time, Captain Malik directly raised his knee and slammed it into Dr. Gores' lower abdomen. He felt as if his internal organs were being squeezed out at this time. This knee hit directly scattered his consciousness. Dr. Gores' consciousness was empty at this time, and he slowly fell to the ground. The most important thing is that there are more and more of these guys of unknown origin. Looking at Dr. Gores lying motionless on the ground, Captain Malik said indifferently. Then he directly lifted him up, then looked at Vice-Captain Mayfair in the room and said indifferently, "Today is your day off. I'll deal with it." Vice-Captain Mayfair thought for a moment and said, "You're about to participate in the ceremony as an oracle. Let me do it. After all, I'm also the Vice-Captain of the Temple Guards. When something happens, there's no reason for me to avoid it. It's okay, it's just on the way." Captain Malik waved his hand, "Have a good rest." Just like that, Vice-Captain Mayfair silently watched as Captain Malik carried the man away, until he was completely gone. Vice-Captain Mayfair sighed at this time. Instead of closing the door, she walked into the room and sat in front of the table. She was silent and didn't move for a long time. After an unknown amount of time, Vice Captain Mayfair let out a slow sigh and said indifferently, "No one taught you that closing the door after entering is a form of etiquette." She slowly turned her head and looked at the corner of the room. But there was no one in front of her. Or rather, she couldn't see anyone. "I know you are here. I can feel your arrival." Vice Captain Mayfair smiled softly at this time. "After all, you are me. I used to be." In an empty corner, there was a slight movement in the air. Then, a pale face slowly appeared. At this moment they saw each other in this place. The time of losing consciousness shouldn't be long. Dr. Gores shook his head at this time, trying to make himself more awake. Then he found that he was in a place like a cell. His body was hung by iron chains, and all kinds of torture instruments were hung on the walls around him. At this time, Captain Malik was sitting in front of him, watching him silently. "Not the inner palace?" Dr. Gores was startled. This time, Captain Malik didn't bring him to Mr. Varley in the inner palace as food. Instead, he brought him to this cell. Why did he fall to the ground? "I think it's about time to wake up," Captain Malik finally spoke. Dr. Gores wasn't too frightened at this time. At worst, he would have another death experience. Although the experience was very bad, at least he would know that he wouldn't really die. So, he planned to be naughty. "How about I sleep for a while? I know the way to not appear in the next time," Captain Malik said suddenly. Dr. Gores, who had a mischievous smile on his face, couldn't help but change his expression slightly after hearing this sentence. "I don't seem to have heard what you said clearly." "It's okay if you don't hear it." Captain Malik stood up at this time, walked slowly to Dr. Gores and reached out his hand. Wait a minute, please wait." The doctor finally panicked and said in a cold sweat, "Let's talk about it. Violence is wrong. We are civilized people, we should be reasonable." "I lied to you," Captain Malik said suddenly. Dr. Gores suddenly widened his eyes and opened his mouth in shock, but he couldn't say anything. Captain Malik picked up a dagger hanging on the wall at this time, pointed the dagger at Dr. Gores' chest, and said back and forth, "Of course, this sentence may also be a lie. What do you think it is?" Dr. Gores' throat couldn't help but shake. This guy has a stomach full of tricks? What do you want to do? How much do you know about Mayfair? Tell me and let me go? Depends on how much you said." Dr. Gores was silent for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, "Before I tell you, you have to answer my question first. How much do you know about Mayfair?" "I hate haggling." Captain Malik shook his head, and pointed the dagger at Dr. Gores' heart, and stabbed it slightly. "I hope I won't see you again next time." Dr. Gores couldn't help but be shocked. He really didn't know if he would go back in time next time if he died this time. The main reason was that Captain Malik in front of him was too strange. She was powerful and could even transform twice, just like the monster goddess that was raised by Mr. Wally in the inner palace. Furthermore, he must have known about Mayfair as well. "Don't, I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything." In the face of a huge threat, Dr. Gores could only compromise. "This time, I have to start from many, many years ago, with a person called Jesus." But the doctor planned to delay time. He wanted to see if Boss Luo, who was guarding the first Mayfair in Captain Malik's room, would take action because he waited for too long and realized that he might be in a trap at this time. At this time, Dr. Gores couldn't help but think, could it be that he was tricked again? Jesus? Captain Malik frowned at this time, and the dagger stabbed at Dr. Gores' heart couldn't help but become heavier. Yes, this is very important. Without him saving the world, there wouldn't be me. Dr. Gores hurriedly said, "Don't worry, I won't say it out loud. You see, my life is in your hands, and I cherish my life very much." Captain Malik frowned, and silently walked back to the chair and sat down, saying indifferently, "Go ahead. But you'd better finish it before the ceremony starts, or I'll only hear it then." "You. Who are you?" At the corner of the wall, the first Mephistopheles appeared. He looked at the elf sitting in front of the desk, who had the same appearance and aura as himself. She said that she was able to sense her arrival. However, the first Mephistopheles was the same. She could also sense that this Mephistopheles, who was wearing a guard uniform, had something similar to her. This was indeed her. She told herself so, even though it was so unbelievable. "Don't you already have the answer in your heart?" The second Mayfair said softly. "Why do you still ask? I'm you, can't you feel it? As a matter of fact, I'm the real Mayfair." The first Mayfair took half a step back in fear, and suddenly hit the wall behind her. It was only half a step, but she couldn't retreat anymore, which made her even more panic. She looked at the other person in fear. The first Mayfair subconsciously grabbed her hair, and took deep breaths, as if she was suffocating. "I don't understand. I don't understand. How can this happen? You said you're the real Mayfair, then Who am I? Do you really want to know?" The second Mayfair sighed. The first Mayfair's face was pale, but she nodded slightly. "Even if after knowing the truth, you will fall into an abyss of nightmares that you can't even imagine, even." The second Mayfair looked straight into the eyes of the first Mayfair. "Even if you will be in so much pain that you wish you were dead because of this cruel truth, will you still not hesitate?" The first Mayfair gritted her teeth and finally nodded forcefully. "I just want to know the truth. I don't want to spend my days in this kind of fear that keeps repeating today again and again." The second Mayfair said, "How can you be afraid? From the moment you found out about your time until now, it hasn't been more than half a day. From knowing, to doubting, to half-believing, to now. The time is too short. Can your fear really be considered as fear?" "It's not like that." The first Mayfair held her head in pain and said, "Yes, that's right. Just like you said, from the moment I found out until now, it has only been half a day. The time is indeed too short. But the feeling is different. That feeling seems to originate from my instincts, from my soul. My memories tell me that this is indeed something that happened in just half a day. However, my feelings tell me that this has happened dozens of times, hundreds of times, thousands of times, or even more. This feeling of fear, even when I woke up today, it was already everywhere." The first Mayfair suddenly fell to the ground and muttered to herself, "I feel like I am about to go crazy." Looking at her who was sitting on the ground, the second Mayfair took a deep breath and nodded gently. "Come with me to a place where you can see the truth." The second Mayfair walked to the front of the first Mayfair, extended his hand toward her and said softly, "But you must remember, in the end, I will still kill you to make today start again." "So, you are telling me this?" she muttered to herself. However, she did not receive an answer. Chapter 18:17. With a trace of apprehension, the first Mayfair slowly followed the second Mayfair. She looked at the second Mayfair's majestic uniform and could not help but be absent-minded. "Are you afraid?" the second Mayfair suddenly asked in a low voice, without looking back. "No." The first Mayfair shook her head and said self-deprecatingly, "I just suddenly realized that wearing this uniform is actually quite good. I have never worn it before." The first Mayfair had already escaped from the temple the day before she officially passed the assessment. She could not understand why her other self, the second Mayfair, was already an official member and even the deputy captain of the guards. "Do you really want to wear this uniform?" The second Mayfair turned her head this time. The first Mayfair opened her mouth and looked at the second Mayfair's eyes. She subconsciously said, "You? Don't you know why?" "I know." The second Mayfair smiled and said, "Because my father was also a member of the temple guards. Since she was very young, Mayfair worshipped her father very much and dreamed of becoming a member of the temple guards when she grew up." It seemed that this was the only topic they could talk about. Then they walked in silence in the temple, avoiding the patrolling guards one by one. Finally, they walked out of the temple together, and came to the end of the trial road behind the temple. "Here?" The first Mayfair subconsciously looked at the second Mayfair. she said. "This is the trial road and also the place where it all begins. Do you know why you have to pass the trial road if you want to become a tribe's village?" The first Mayfair said without thinking, "Because only those who pass the trial road are the most outstanding sprites and have the ability to shoulder the future of the entire tribe. It has been like this since ancient times." The second Mayfair suddenly said, "Then do you think the village chief in the village can be said to be the most outstanding sprite? Is he wise enough and brave enough?" Firstly, Mayfair subconsciously said, "I don't know. I haven't had much contact with him. But since he is already the village chief, it is enough to prove that he has passed the trial path and has enough ability. What if I say that the current village chief hasn't actually finished the trial path? He's just lying to everyone." Second Mayfair suddenly said, "What did you say? Grandpa village chief, this is impossible." First Mayfair said in disbelief, "How could he deceive everyone? Why not?" Secondly, Mayfair said indifferently, "As long as someone assumes his identity and completes the 3 tests of the road of trials in everyone's eyes, wouldn't that be enough?" "Who is it?" First Mayfair asked subconsciously. "Father." Secondly, Mayfair said in a deep voice, "The man who united with Mother and gave birth to you and me. He successfully completed the trial." This was something that she had never told Mayfair. But First Mayfair was in disbelief. Why pretend? In order to obtain the power to defeat the oracle. Second Mephistopheles gently exhaled. "You know, as an offering, it's impossible to combine with a member of the opposite sex in love. Unless there's someone who can successfully defeat the oracle during the grand ceremony, only then can the offering be taken away. Father is very clear that the power of the oracle is absolutely not something that he can handle. Therefore, the trial path is his only hope. Aren't the people of the temple guards absolutely prohibited from challenging the trial path, so he had to pretend to be Grandpa village chief?" First Mayfair instantly reacted. Second Mayfair nodded and said, "Only in this way can he avoid the eyes of the temple guards. Furthermore, Father doesn't care about the matter of becoming the village chief after completing the trial path. He only cares about defeating the oracle. Finally, he can also deceive the oracle." First Mayfair shook her head and subconsciously said, "I have never heard of any power that can be obtained through the trial path. That's for sure." Second Mayfair said indifferently, "Because the current village chief didn't pass the trial by himself at all. He was just lucky to be chosen by Father. He was elected as the new village chief under the circumstances that he didn't have enough tolerance. Naturally, he also doesn't know what kind of power can be obtained after completing the trial path. In fact, you can treat the current village chief as a fake one. He is indeed so." Second Mayfair directly walked out of the totem pillars at the back door of the temple guards. First Mayfair saw this and hurriedly chased after him. She even quickly caught up with him, but at this time she was greeted by a vast expanse of white fog. She almost couldn't see her other self. Second Mayfair suddenly said at this time, "These totem pillars were built by Goddess Brahma. The purpose is to resist the spread of this white fog. Do you know who created this white fog? You should be able to guess who the power that can make Goddess Brahma fear belongs to in this tribal world. Gloria." First Mayfair couldn't help but exclaim at this time, "Another legendary sleeping goddess." Saying so, the vast expanse of white fog suddenly split open a passage. Then, they saw a statue. The third stage of the trial path, the statue that would ask the challenger questions. At this time, looking at the blindfolded female statue in front of them, who was hung with chains like a sinner, First Mayfair stepped back in fear. "The statue of the goddess of Gloria," the second Mephistopheles said slowly. "She died here and became this statue." "Her? Who? Who else?" "Goddess Gloria." Captain Malik's patience almost made Dr. Gores desperate. He had already started talking about Jesus, but he didn't talk so much. Then, Captain Malik played with various torture instruments and quickly talked about the chessboard. Even the servants, masters, and so on. At this time, Dr. Gores seemed to say everything he could and couldn't say. He just wanted to protect himself. That's about it. Dr. Gores finally sighed. We have no choice now. The only thing we can do is to solve the matter of Mayfair's time reversal, then we can leave here. Leave today, otherwise I'm afraid we will be trapped in a today. Captain Malik was silent. Dr. Gores said, I know this is difficult for you chessboard creatures to accept. You think that the world in front of you is the whole world, but you didn't expect that such a world is just a plaything in the hands of others. Even your own life and death is just to please others. You don't seem surprised at all? Captain Malik said indifferently, Someone once said the same thing as you. Who? Dr. Gores asked subconsciously. Captain Malik glanced at him indifferently and said slowly, It's a guy named Gerald, like you, claiming to be from the world outside chessboard. Gerald? Sneeve's accomplice? Dr. Gores opened his mouth and immediately said, No, even if Gerald really told you this, under Mayfair's time reversal, you shouldn't remember anything. No, you said that you know how to really kill me. Even if time is reversed, I won't come back. So you knew from the very beginning about Mayfair's time reversal. You even knew that there would be two Mayfair at the same time in today. I understand now. So that's how it is. What do you understand? Captain Malik narrowed his eyes. Dr. Gores said slowly, I understand why you didn't expose Mayfair at the beginning at the door of the inner palace. Later, you clearly wanted to let her go, but suddenly attacked her and imprisoned her. Tell me, Dr. Gores said, because when you were in front of the door of the inner palace, you weren't sure which Mayfair appeared in front of you and which Mayfair was on the ground, so you didn't make a move. You took her to a remote place, deliberately said those words, and even wanted to let her go. In fact, you wanted to confirm which one she was. As long as this Mayfair's answer wasn't the answer that the vice-captain of the Temple Guards should give, you could confirm and then make a move. But it seems like you don't want Mayfair, who is the vice-captain, to know that you actually know about her time reversal? Some people say that smart people die quickly. Captain Malik said expressionlessly, It seems that you are not far from death. You don't want to kill me. Dr. Gores said quickly at this time, If you wanted to kill me, you would have killed me long ago. You wouldn't have brought me to this place and asked me so many questions, because you clearly remember that you sent me to the inner palace. Now Mayfair's time has been reversed, and I have also been reversed, so, for you, I am also special. You should still want to get something from me, as long as I am still of some value to you. Actually, I can cooperate with others, such as you. Time's up. Captain Malik sneered at this time. In the darkness, he slowly stretched out his hand, and reached for Dr. Gores's head, and grabbed it tightly. Dr. Gores even had a feeling that his head was about to be crushed by the other party. He only felt that his skull was about to break at any time. He was in so much pain that he couldn't help but scream. It's time to attend the grand ceremony, Captain Malik said slowly. He put down his hand, and Dr. Gores's head directly lowered. The road of trial, the third level in front of Gloria's statue. Listening to the narration of the second Mayfair, the first Mayfair seemed to think of something and blurted out, Who killed the goddess Gloria? Legend has it that the goddess Prema and the goddess Gloria created the hometown of the elves together. Naturally, only the gods can kill the gods. Goddess Prema, how is this possible? The first Mayfair said in horror, They are sisters. The second Mayfair said indifferently, What kind of world do you think the outside world, outside the forest? I don't know, I have never seen it. The first Mayfair shook his head and immediately said, Perhaps it is a very prosperous place with a lot of humans and things that have never been seen before. They will live happily with a lot of delicious things, candies and the like. Who said something like this to me? When the first Mayfair said this, he didn't know why he had a feeling of déjà vu. What a beautiful world. The second Mayfair shook his head, but the fact is not so beautiful. The outside world is dominated by a terrifying power. It wantonly changes all the rules of the outside world, just like a real supreme god. The whole world has become a puppet of this power. In the end, this power even invaded here. The hometown of the elves was created by the two goddesses. For them, it is like a child. So, in order to resist the rule of this mysterious power, the goddess Brahma made a decision. The first Mayfair was shocked subconsciously and said with a trembling voice, "What decision?" The second Mayfair said, "Sacrificing the life and power of a goddess to resist the invasion of this terrible power that dominates the whole world. Because of this, the goddess Gloria died in the hands of her beloved sister, Brahma. The goddess we have been worshipping, unexpectedly." The first Mayfair's face was pale at this time, actually killed another goddess with her own hands, the goddess who created our elves' hometown together. It's hard to accept, right? The second Mayfair said faintly, "For all the elves, such a goddess, Brahma, is like a sinner." Yes, such a goddess, Brahma. Is it still worthy for the elves to worship? It's just to let the elf tribe continue to survive. The first Mayfair said with a trembling voice, "In order to let the elves live, not to be dominated, not to be enslaved, everyone will understand, everyone will understand. The second Mayfair's smile was pale at this time, looking at the first Mayfair with a sad expression. "Do you know, when Brahma killed her sister, Gloria, she also said the same thing. Even your expression is the same." The first Mayfair retreated in fear. She subconsciously raised her head and looked at the statue of the goddess of Gloria in front of her. As if she was being interrogated from the depths of her soul, she suddenly collapsed to the ground. Why do you know this?" The first Mayfair looked at her other self in a daze. "Why?" The second Mayfair walked to the front of the first Mayfair. "You say why?" "Because I am the power that Father obtained in the trial road." At the same time, on the forehead of the second Mayfair, a black pattern began to bloom slowly. Chapter 1818. Miss Gong Lina was the only one who was playing the chessboard game. Ever since Mr. Varley and the butler Lisa formed a team and entered the roaring forest. At this time, only Tang Tianlin's follower card was still moving on the chessboard. The rest were quietly stopped in an area of the roaring forest. Miss Gong Lina, who had a feeling of being alone, suddenly smiled and said, "Varley, are you secretly discussing how to deal with me? How can sister have such thoughts?" Mr. Varley said exaggeratedly at this time, "We are family." No comment. Miss Gong Lina turned to look at Miss Maid, who was playing with the dog, and chuckled. "Speaking of which, I don't seem to be worthy of your name. Varley, as the host, you don't even know how to introduce yourself." "Sister, you misunderstood. Even I don't know the name of this lady," Mr. Varley said in surprise. Miss Maid threw out the used gloves again, and asked Black Hound to pick them up. She was quite surprised. "Oh, I haven't introduced myself yet?" "I don't think so," Mr. Varley said after thinking for a while. "Sorry for my rudeness." Yu Yi smiled faintly and then said, "But since you didn't introduce yourself at the beginning, let's just forget about it. After all, we may not have a chance to meet again in the future." After Miss Gong Lina and Mr. Varley looked at each other, Miss Gong Lina said lightly, "Varley, is your family's chef slacking off? It seems that he has been gone for a long time." Mr. Butler glanced at the ghoul bodyguards at this time. "Send 2 people to the kitchen to see how Mr. Nelson's food is prepared." The ghoul bodyguards looked strange for a while, and finally, 2 of them walked out silently. Mr. Butler didn't remember that he had sent 2 bodyguards before. Miss Gong Lina shook her head. She continued the boring action role. "If you don't come out of the forest, maybe I will pass the game." Mr. Varley narrowed his eyes and said softly, "Sister, please show mercy." Suddenly, the door of the banquet hall opened, but there was no one at the entrance. Only a gust of wind blew in. Then, he heard the sound of thunder. It turned out that there was a sudden and heavy downpour outside. The candlelight in the banquet hall was instantly extinguished by the strong wind. Only then did he realize that the chessboard had been emitting a faint light all along. The butler waved his hand, and the ghoul bodyguards hurried to close the door and light the candles again. "I don't like this kind of weather." Mr. Varley shook his head at this time and said rather lazily, "It makes me feel that flying will be a very sloppy thing." The ghoul bodyguards quickly closed the door to the banquet hall and lit up the candles again. Thus, the banquet hall returned to its original state, bright and quiet. The surrounding braziers illuminated the entire venue. The young elf men and women came to the sacrificial girl hand in hand, waiting for the blessing devoutly. The oracle in black armor stood silently beside the sacrificial girl, Chiao Lina, but the other elves didn't dare to look at him. He seemed to represent some kind of violent rule. Grandpa Village Head suddenly shuddered. He felt as if a gust of cold wind had suddenly blown into the hubbub of voices, and he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. Grandpa Village Chief cleared his throat, walked to the front of the crowd, and said loudly, "Be quiet. Pray for the miracle of Goddess, Brahma, with all your heart." The crowd suddenly became quiet. Even the whispered discussion couldn't be heard. Mr. Sneeve had to lower his voice at this time. "What's the matter? Why hasn't Gores come back yet?" Last time in Today, Dr. Gores had appeared in a high-profile manner, but he didn't appear this time. They didn't even see Luaccio. A trace of doubt flashed in the eyes of the maid, Tina. Then, she frowned and said quickly, "He's here." "Who?" "Cardile." While they were talking, a black whirlwind rolled down from the sky. The whirlwind that came from the top finally blew crazily in the venue of the grand ceremony. The wind was very strong, and the elves in the front row were blown down by the strong black wind. The sacrificial girl was almost blown down, but the oracle in black armor reached out and held her. There was a commotion. After the commotion, a man wearing a black robe embroidered with golden edges and holding a long magic staff appeared out of nowhere. This black-robed man, Cardile, was holding the long magic staff in his hand, pointing at the oracle in black armor in a provocative manner. "Who are you? What do you want to do? Get down." The village elder hurriedly stood up, shocked and angry. Cardile waved the magic staff in his hand, and a black lightning bolt shot out and struck the village elder, who was known as the bravest warrior in the village. Just in time, Village Head Grandpa shouted loudly as he prepared for battle. Then, the black lightning bolt struck him to the ground. His whole body twitched, and white foam came out of his mouth. Then, he fainted. All the elves were shocked. At this moment, Cardile pointed his magic staff at the sky again. Dense black lightning bolts fell from the sky, accompanied by a bone-chilling cold wind. The shocked elves were even more panicked at this moment and fled in all directions. Before long, not many people were left here. They had already hidden and watched this scene from afar in horror. "It's much quieter now." Cardile calmly looked at the oracle in black armor, who was supporting the sacrificial girl, and said slowly, "I heard that if I defeat you, I can take the sacrificial girl away. Then, I won't waste any more words. Do you want to hand her over, or do you want me to knock you down?" Cardile really came. Mr. Sneeve, who was hiding and watching closely, frowned. That was why Dr. Gores and Boss Luo didn't show up. Sneeve agreed that Luaccio didn't show up. He even hoped that Luaccio could hide well and study all the skills of Cardile. It would be best if he could find a way to deal with them. As for Dr. Gores, did something happen to Gores? Tina was silent. She didn't have any idea and could only wait and see. The oracle in black armor pulled out the two swords hanging on his back and held them in both hands. A terrifying aura spread out, like a beast coming out of the darkness. Cardile didn't panic. He spat out grayish-black bubbles with his long wand. He had used this skill before and had successfully broken the armor of the oracle. Obviously, he chose to use the same skill to save trouble. However, the oracle didn't want to wait for these grayish-black bubbles to form. He swung his sword and rushed out. Cadillac sneered. He opened his palm and directly blocked the black armor envoy's sword. A silver-black bracelet on his wrist suddenly lit up and produced a semicircular gray light barrier, directly blocking the black armor envoy's sword. Bang, 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 bang! The oracle's two swords crazily slashed the grayish light screen. In 1 second, he had slashed dozens of times. The grayish light screen gradually shattered. Cardiel couldn't help but frown. However, the number of grayish-black bubbles was enough. He chuckled and suddenly dispersed the screen. Then, he jumped back. At the same time, the grayish-black bubbles shot out toward the oracle. This oracle was obviously going to suffer a terrifying attack. A series of rapid and loud explosions, accompanied by billowing black smoke and flames, appeared. At this moment, Cadillac, who was controlling all of this, looked on expressionlessly. He was already preparing to deal with the Black Armor Oracle's second transformation. However, at this moment, an unprecedented sense of danger made Cardiel's back feel cold. He frowned as if he had sensed something and suddenly raised his head. In the sky, at this moment, a figure was rapidly falling down. It was the black-armored messenger of God. At this moment, he was chopping down with his sword. Cardiel's pupils shrank. After changing his occupation to one of the ultimate occupations of the Shadow series, his agility was obviously reduced. Cardiel only had time to wave his wand in the face of this thunder-like strike. However, before he could release his skill, the oracle's sword had already hit the wand. Bang! Cardiel was like a kite with a broken string. He was slammed into the wall of the house. What's going on? He seems to have known Cardiel's attack beforehand. Mr. Snaff, who was watching the battle, couldn't help but notice this and cried out in surprise. Cardiel should be the one having a headache now. Tina sneered and suddenly said, "Mr. Sneeve, do you still remember what I told you before? You're planning to." Snakel was stunned for a moment before he fell silent. What's going on? Cardiel awkwardly pushed away the fragments of the wall that were pressing on him. He shook his head to wake himself up. He regrouped and planned to fight again. But at this moment, a sharp sword was already pointed at his throat. What entered his eyes was the black-armored divine envoy. A look of disbelief appeared on Cardiel's face. There was even a trace of panic. It was as if he had never thought that the black armor envoy would be so tyrannical. But Cadillac didn't panic too much. At worst, he could just do it again. Next time, he would properly combine his skills and attack, and directly kill this black armor oracle in all directions. You're very powerful. However, I won't be so careless next time. Cardiel snorted. The oracle pointed at Cardiel's throat with one sword and raised the other sword high. This was a sword that could easily tear a person's body apart. However, the oracle didn't slash down immediately after he raised the other sword. Instead, he stopped. Cadillac was startled subconsciously, but he felt that the black armor oracle's sword was shaking at this moment. It seemed to be unable to hold it firmly. In the blink of an eye, Cottier didn't have time to think about the situation of the black armor oracle, but he knew that the opportunity to turn the tables had arrived. He gritted his teeth, and with his injured body, he forcefully stabbed the long staff into the ground. Raging flame. At this moment, flames began to erupt from where the long staff pierced into the ground. Then, a huge pillar of fire soared into the sky and swallowed everything. This was the move that Cadillac had originally prepared for the second transformation of the black-armored oracle. The huge fire illuminated the whole village and didn't disappear for a long time. After a long time, there was still terrifying heat in the surroundings. More than half of the site of the grand ceremony had been melted. The surging heat made this place look like a magma zone. Cardiel held his wand with both hands, gasping for breath. He struggled to stand up. In front of him, a lot of heat was emitting from the oracle's body. His sword fell to the ground, but he didn't move at all. Cardiel frowned. At this moment, he saw the oracle's black armor shatter instantly. Cardiel's pupils shrank and he screamed, "You are Gores!" After the black armor shattered, the one who appeared wasn't Captain Malik, but Dr. Gores. At this moment, Dr. Gores was expressionless and didn't respond to Cardiel's call. He slowly fell down. Plop! A black pattern blossomed on the second Mephistopheles' forehead and quickly spread to her entire body. This gave the second Mephistopheles a strange sense of beauty. Looking at all of this, Mephistopheles couldn't help but feel an instinctive fear. She trembled and said in a trembling voice, "What do you mean? You are the power that Father obtained from the trial road. What do you mean?" "It means that she is actually the reincarnation of the goddess, Gloria." These words didn't come from the second Mayfair. At this moment, not only the first Mayfair, but also the second Mayfair showed a strange expression. They subconsciously looked at the place where the voice came from. Gloria's goddess statue. A figure slowly walked out from behind the statue of the goddess, and appeared in front of the two Mephistopheles. "Malik, it's you?" The second Mayfair opened her mouth. "How can you? Didn't you participate in the ceremony?" Captain Malik, who had walked out from behind the statue of the goddess, wasn't looking at the second Mephistopheles. Instead, he was looking at the first Mephistopheles. "Your father secretly replaced the current village chief back then and entered the path of the trial. He was the bravest elf. Except for the oracle, he was the bravest elf. He succeeded and passed 2 levels in a row. He came here and met the goddess Gloria, who was killed here." Looking at the surprised and pale first Mayfair, Captain Malik slowly said, "As the price for obtaining the power to defeat the oracle, he had to combine with your mother, who was originally going to be a sacrifice and give birth to the reborn Gloria. That is you." At the same time, Captain Malik also pointed to the second Mayfair and said in a deep voice, "It is also her. #######PS. As usual. Chapter 1819. The Elves' Village, the site of the grand ceremony. In the wreckage of the collapsed house, Dr. Gores fell in front of him. Cadillac was startled at first, then he frowned and looked around nervously. He was afraid that the real black-armored oracle would hide in the dark and wait for an opportunity to attack. However, after waiting for a while, nothing happened as he had expected. He had to walk to the unconscious Dr. Gores and turn his body over to see if Gores was dead. He was still breathing. The reason why Gores could withstand the power of his last skill without dying was because of the oracle's black armor. But Gores also looked quite serious at this time. His face was pale. Cadillac squatted down and slapped Dr. Gores' face a few times. "Get up. Why is it you? Where is the real oracle?" It was Gores in the black armor, not the real oracle. So, knocking down Gores immediately was of no help to what Cadillac wanted to do. So, Cadillac couldn't help but feel quite annoyed at this time. Under Cadillac's slaps, Dr. Gores slowly woke up. Don't touch my perfect face, bastard." Cadillac was obviously not in the mood to talk to Gores about this. He directly grabbed Gores' collar and violently lifted him up. "Why did you become an oracle? Where is the real oracle?" "I don't know." Dr. Gores panted weakly at this time. "I was caught by Malik for interrogation. Then I fainted. I don't remember what happened. Where is this? Why am I here? And what happened? Why do I feel like my body is going to fall apart? I hit you." Dr. Gores was silent for a moment. Should I scold someone? Cadillac let go of his hand and threw Gores to the ground. Then, he stood up and looked like he was going to leave. Dr. Gores quickly asked, "Where are you going?" Cadillac didn't turn his head at this time. "Wally asked me to send a message to the 3 of you. If you want to leave the chessboard safely, then find a way to get rid of the one in your team who should be eliminated. In front of the final guardian, he will naturally team up with you." "That's it?" Dr. Gores frowned. Cadillac said again, and he said, "Who this chessboard belongs to, don't you know in your heart? Don't forget, he has never lost." Dr. Girls was silent. He watched Cardil leave and suddenly thought of something. "Although I don't know where Malik went, since he controlled me and made me replace him as an oracle here, it means that he probably knew what would happen and wanted to avoid something." Dr. Girls was silent. He watched Cardil leave and suddenly thought of something. "What do you mean?" Cadillac stopped in his tracks. Dr. Gores stood up little by little. "Malik knows about Mayfair's time reversal. I always feel that he not only knows everything, but also has something he wants to do. Mayfair is the key, but she may die soon, and then time will be reversed again. So, if you want to know something, you must find Mayfair before she dies today." "Do you know where she is?" Dr. Gores nodded. "In the afternoon, when I followed her all the way to the temple in the village, I was afraid of losing her, so I secretly sprinkled something on her. It can help us find her." While speaking, Dr. Gores took out a small bottle from his arms and opened it. A small flying insect flew out of the bottle. After a while, it seemed to have found something and flew away. "Follow, don't lose her," Dr. Gores quickly said. "Okay." Cardil didn't even look back as he followed him. "Wait! Is there anything else? You don't want to help me? You want to go by yourself?" "I plan to." "Help me." They seem to be going somewhere. They may have talked about something inside. Seeing Dr. Gores and Cadillac hurriedly leaving the wreckage of the house, Mr. Sneeve in the distance frowned. "How did Gores become an oracle? You will know if you follow them." At this time, Tina said indifferently, "I feel that today is very special this time. Something is going to happen, but we are put aside. It's really disappointing." "Don't follow them too closely," Mr. Sneeve said in a low voice. Soon, except for the elves who had fainted because of the battle or died innocently, there was no one at the scene of the grand ceremony. It was dead silent. No, there was actually another one, a witch from the academy who was tied up like a dumpling. Nan Xiaonan was still on the roof of a house at this time. She struggled like a caterpillar for a long time before successfully standing up. "Well, it's so slow. Why hasn't Mr. Luo come yet? Is the battle over?" Looking at the sky, Nan Xiaonan finally decided to wait here. Last time, she had already delivered a package here. She was afraid that if this Mr. Luo didn't receive the package here this time, he would explode and be very unhappy. Then, he would continue to play with her in every possible way. It would be fine if he played with her, but she was afraid that he would bear a grudge. "Well, would it be better for me to change a binding position?" she pondered. In the trial road, in front of the third-level Gloria's goddess statue, the second Mayfair, with black patterns blooming on her body, suddenly attacked Captain Malik, who was pointing at her. With a ghostly speed, she instantly appeared behind Malik. At that moment, Captain Malik appeared to be unaware of what was going on. Just as second Mephistopheles was about to take his head off, Captain Malik strangely twisted his body. With an even faster speed, he directly grabbed second Mephistopheles by the neck and fiercely threw her to the ground. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, the second Mayfair had a touch of panic on her face. The reincarnation of the legendary goddess Gloria, who created the home of the elves, only has this little power. Captain Malik shook his head at this time. Too disappointing. At this time, she was still grabbed by the neck by Captain Malik and was even lifted up again. Why do you know this?" Captain Malik said indifferently. "I think what you want to ask is why I am not affected by backtracking." The second Mayfair desperately grabbed Malik's hand that was holding her neck, but no matter how hard she struggled, she could only tear Captain Malik's sleeve. At this time, she saw the tattoo on Captain Malik's arm that was like the black pattern blooming on her body. The second Mayfair's face changed instantly. "You are Oracle, isn't it?" Captain Malik said indifferently. "Of course, compared to the previous oracles, I am slightly more orthodox." The second Mayfair's face changed. At this time, the black pattern on her body suddenly began to bloom wildly, then shadow arms began to grow. However, at this time, Captain Malik grabbed the second Mayfair's forehead. The black pattern on his arm began to bloom at this time, releasing light. Under this light, the shadow arms began to wither. Even the pattern on the second Mayfair's body withered little by little, and finally retreated into her forehead and disappeared. Before she could say anything, she was knocked unconscious by Captain Malik's knee and fell directly to the ground. Captain Malik looked at the first Mayfair at this time, who was at a loss. What do you want to do? The first Mayfair subconsciously stepped back. I just want to take the other half of the power of the goddess, Gloria, from you. Captain Malik said indifferently, half of it is on you, and the other half is on her. I finally found something that can be gathered together this time. After saying that, without waiting for the first Mayfair to react, Captain Malik had already made a move. The first Mayfair consciously wanted to resist, but in the face of absolute strength and speed, resistance was futile. She just felt her consciousness go blank in an instant. At this time, the two Mayfair fell to the ground at the same time, unconscious. Captain Malik slowly sighed, walked to the Gloria statue of the goddess, and said indifferently, "Don't ask me any questions. This is useless against me. Today will be over." After saying that, Captain Malik punched out, and the whole statue of the goddess was shattered. After that, a foot-long dagger appeared at the base of the broken statue of the goddess. Captain Malik directly pulled out the dagger and muttered to himself, "Soon, temple." The elf guards fell down one after another. Before they fell, there was actually a black wind blowing past. Dr. Gores coldly watched Cardil hit the guards one by one with his stick. It was as if he saw a figure of a monster with a sword. As expected of one of the few ultimate professions in chessboard game, Mr. Varley's accumulation in chessboard world was unexpectedly rich. Do you know that in the inner hall of the temple, you will meet another Mr. Varley? Gores suddenly said at this time. As expected, Cade was stunned and stopped walking. Another Wally? To be precise, it is Mr. Varley who only has the memory of being driven out of the clan territory. Dr. Gores thought for a while and said, "As for the reason, I don't know yet." "Even so, what does it mean?" Cardil shook his head and said, "It doesn't change the fact that he can control chessboard. It only proves that he has more secret methods in chessboard world." "You are quite smart." Dr. Gores chuckled and said, "You want to forget about Mr. Core's revenge just like that?" Cardil sneered, "As a vampire, don't you know that your blood is cold?" Dr. Gores shrugged and then suddenly frowned. "Strange, the direction of the flying insect is a bit strange. Why did it suddenly fly back? Does it mean that it is moving?" Cardil thought for a while. Dr. Gores looked around and suddenly said, "I didn't expect to come back here. Cardil, I think there is someone that you might be interested in meeting now." "Who?" "Have you forgotten the guy who sent you back to the spawn point and almost died?" Dr. Gores said with a smile, "I know where he is now. If you want to get rid of him, this might be a good chance. I know that he hasn't improved since he killed you for the first time. Not to mention collecting magic attack equipment, I'm afraid that he hasn't even killed a demon monster." "Are you going to kill your own team leader so soon?" Cardil couldn't help but sneer. Dr. Gores said calmly, "It's not a bad thing. It's just a better choice. Obviously, I will have a better future if I continue to be the family doctor in the castle." "Where is he?" This was Cardil's response. Knocking sounds. Dr. Gores knocked on the door of Captain Malik's room alone. "Is that Mr. Gores?" At this moment, hearing the familiar voice of Boss Luo, Dr. Gores was stunned and then opened his mouth. Is it really okay for this guy to answer the door so openly? What if the person who knocked on the door wasn't him, but the guards of the temple, or even Malik himself? What would this guy say reveal his identity? Dr. Gores shook his head and immediately pushed the door open and entered. But he didn't see Boss Luo's figure. He could see everything in this room at a glance. At this moment, Dr. Giles suddenly felt his heart skip a beat. Does this guy have another invisibility scroll? Is he hiding beside me now? Speaking of which, he had never admitted that he only had one invisibility scroll. Dr. Gores couldn't help but look around in surprise, especially behind him. He even reached out to touch the surroundings to confirm more carefully. I'm in, where are you? Oh, I'm coming out. With that, a strange sound was heard. Dr. Gores subconsciously looked for the source of the sound, only to see the luminous sarcophagus standing at the side slowly opening. Then Boss Luo walked out from inside. You? Why are you hiding inside? Dr. Gores subconsciously asked. Boss Luo smiled and said, I thought it would be troublesome if someone unknown came in, so I thought of hiding inside. Hiding? Hiding in the sarcophagus? Dr. Gores opened his mouth. He shook his head and remembered the real purpose of coming back this time, immediately saying, I can't track down the other Mayfair. Why don't we? Wait, where is the Mayfair here? He then remembered that he didn't see anything when he entered the door. Naturally, he didn't see Mayfair, who was supposed to be imprisoned on the stone bed by Captain Malik. She went out, Boss Luo said casually. I'll wait here for her to come back, Mr. Gores. Do you want to come with me? She went out. How did she go out? Of course, I let her go out. Oh, you let her go. Dr. Gores nodded and immediately said angrily, We agreed to let them confront each other after I caught the second Mayfair. King lied to me again. Boss Luo smiled and said, Not really. This should be what Dr. Gores wanted, to make yourself look like a gullible person, something like that. Dr. Gores's angry expression calmed down immediately, even squinting his eyes. Then guess whether I'm gullible or not this time? At this moment, Gores, you always talk so much nonsense. Cadillac's voice suddenly sounded in the room. At the same time, the whole room was covered with a gray shadow. My skill activation has been prepared long ago. He slowly stepped on the black fog on the ground and walked into the room. He looked at Boss Luo and smiled. We meet again. The black fog floating on the ground instantly rolled up and eroded everything in the room. The furniture and the stone bed began to be eroded and directly melted. ########PS 8084th. Chapter 1820. It melted and even sank into the thick ink-like fog, as if it was going to devour all life. It was as if it was constantly describing the terrifying power of this skill that had been prepared for a long time. Cadillac had come fully prepared this time. He knew the power of the skill, but in the midst of the ever-changing battle, he simply couldn't find the time to use this skill that he had spent so much time on. That was why he needed Dr. Gores to talk nonsense at the beginning. Now everything was fine. Cadillac looked coldly at Luocio, who was in the middle of the thick black fog of the devouring serpent skill. He didn't feel much pleasure. This was just an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. It was something that needed to be done. No matter how many people participated in this game, since Mr. Varley personally joined the game, the ending of chessboard was already decided. Once, before the game started, when the number ball was drawn in the banquet hall, Cadillac felt unlucky that he became Varley's follower. But now that he thought about it, if it wasn't him but someone else who became Mr. Varley's follower, perhaps he would have already died in chessboard. Thinking of this, Cadillac looked at Luocio, whose calf was covered by the thick black fog of devouring serpent, and a trace of sympathy flashed in his eyes. What's going on? He doesn't seem to be affected much? But Dr. Gores suddenly frowned at this moment and whispered in Cadillac's ear, You haven't completely released this skill? Cadillac said calmly, After all, it is one of the most precious sets, the Holy Set. Although the defensive ability of magic is not its strong point, it is still better than ordinary equipment. It's not surprising that it resisted a little. Dr. Gores didn't think so at this moment. There was no reason. It was just an intuition that he couldn't explain clearly. I'm afraid things aren't that simple. He looked at Boss Luo, who was swallowed by a devouring serpent, with a surprised and doubtful expression. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. Is it that evil? Boss Luo was saying something, or reading something, like he was talking to himself. Well, you are being attacked by the devouring serpent skill. The resistance of your holy set is about to disappear. It turned out that he was reading a message from the chessboard, a system-like notification. Why is he still in the mood to study this at a time like this? At this moment, Dr. Gores could not help but think of a déjà vu of an old man holding a manual and fiddling with a newly bought home appliance. Cadillac couldn't help but have a strange feeling. His grip on the long staff tightened involuntarily. But right now, he needed to focus on maintaining the activation of Devouring Serpent. So he couldn't make any other attacks. So, Cadillac subconsciously winked at Gores. However, Dr. Gores's brows were loosened and tightened. He was not looking at him. Oh, let me see, there's a solution. Was there a solution? Dr. Gores opened his mouth and muttered to himself. It can't be that evil. It can't be, I've got it. Please use the Holy Light Priest skill, Azure Heart of Tranquility, to cleanse the darkness. So it's this skill. I've got it. As he spoke, Boss Luo gently raised his hands. Then, a hazy white light suddenly appeared between his hands. The white light connected into a thin stream, slowly falling from his hands and flowing into the thick fog. No. It can't be that evil. Dr. Gores widened his eyes in disbelief. Liar, it's all a liar. You're holding the Holy Light Sword, but you're wearing the Holy Armor. This is obviously exclusive to the Knight of Holy Light. How can you use the Holy Light Priest skill? Once the flowing holy light flowed into the thick black fog, it was like starlight that lit up the night sky, instantly lighting up the surrounding darkness and cleansing it. Why not? Isn't there a dual control function card? Boss Luo slowly said. A function card that allows a servant to change to two professions at the same time. Dr. Gores, you've played the chessboard game for so long, don't you know? I know. There is indeed one. But I've never seen it appear. Even Mr. Varley didn't draw it. I can't even pay for it. There's definitely nothing in the card pool. It's a scam. That's too much. Dr. Gores sighed deeply. He subconsciously glanced at Cadillac, who was at a loss. If he was completely prepared for the profession of the Knight of Holy Light, then the Holy Light Priest was prepared for his current Shadow Warlock. Gores, do it. There's still a chance. Cadillac suddenly shouted in a deep voice. Dr. Gores suddenly shivered. He turned his palm, and a glittering silver dagger slid out like a poisonous snake. In a flash, this dagger like a poisonous snake suddenly shot out like a meteor. Gores, you! This was actually a meteor that crashed into Cadillac. At this moment, Cadillac, who was holding the long staff tightly, looked at the dagger that directly pierced into his chest in shock and anger. F***CK. Did he actually want to do this? Because this dagger was actually given to Gores by him, before he came to Captain Malik's room. This dagger was even deliberately kept when Mr. Varley left his legacy in the chessboard world. He temporarily lent it to Gores as an extra insurance, thinking that Gores would use it to deal with his captain's servant. Humph! Cadillac, you're too naive. Dr. Girth shook his head at this moment. With a side kick, he directly kicked Cadillac, who was shocked and furious but had a dagger in his body, sending him flying. How can I betray my teammate? You can't even tell that I only agreed to cooperate with you to make you numb. You deserve to fail. Gores, I'll remember you. Cade, who was heavily injured, screamed as he flew out. His body turned into a black wind and instantly disappeared in the corridor outside the door. Dr. Gore's throat shook at this time, and he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He immediately took a deep breath, turned around, and said with a stern face, after this injury, Cadillac shouldn't be able to make a comeback in a short time. but I have already inquired about his information and what skills he can use. I will tell you in detail later. The next time you meet him, you will be sure to defeat him. Don't worry. Why are you looking at me like this? Do you really think that I brought Cadillac here to deal with you? We are in the same boat. How can that be? Boss Luo smiled indifferently, just like what Mr. Gores said. This is just to fool Mr. Cadillac's actions. But is this okay? After all, Mr. Cadillac is Mr. Varley's follower. Dr. Gores trembled slightly, and immediately said seriously, "What are you talking about? This is an insult to my character. There is no father and son in the competition. This is the competition of the chessboard game, so naturally, we must abide by the spirit of competition. Mr. Varley will also understand. Besides, Cadillac suffered a loss this time. If he wants to blame someone, he can only blame himself for being too stupid. He has no strategy and only knows how to be reckless." "Thank you for your hard work, Mr. Gores." Boss Luo nodded. Dr. Gores waved his hand as if it was nothing. "It's just something for the team. It's nothing." "Speaking of which," Boss Luo asked curiously, "how did Mr. Gores meet Mr. Cadillac and even come here together?" "Oh, I'll have to start from Captain Malik." Dr. Gores sighed at this time. "I am ashamed to say that I was captured by Malik, and then—" His memory was not very clear, and he could only vaguely remember some things, but he remembered clearly what happened before he was controlled in the prison cell. Without hiding anything, Dr. Gores carefully talked about his experience. After a while, "In this way, in order to numb Cadillac, I proposed to go with him to find Mayfair, who is the vice-captain," Dr. Gores said seriously, "but my real purpose was to lure him here so that I could secretly take him away. But he still escaped. It seems that Mr. Varley's collection in the chessboard world was used. What a pity!" "It's not really a pity," Boss Luo shook his head and said. "At least Mr. Cadillac used up a part of his collection. Besides, Mr. Gores also obtained a lot of information from Captain Malik this time. It really helped a lot. I feel like I have advanced a lot." "What did you find?" Dr. Gores was stunned and asked subconsciously. Boss Luo said, "Now it seems that Miss Mayfair won't come back here for the time being. I think it's time for us to find her." "Do you know where she is?" Gores couldn't help but open his mouth. "Probably." "Then what are we waiting for?" Dr. Gores clapped his hands. "I seem to see the dawn of clearing the level from you." Luochu seemed to point out something. "It's not me who wants to clear the level." Dr. Girth was stunned for a moment, and he immediately understood. "Yes. Not only you. It's us." Boss Luo smiled and made an inviting gesture, indicating that Dr. Gores could officially start the action. But just as he walked out of the door, Boss Luo suddenly asked, "By the way, Dr. Gores, do you mind if I ask you a question?" Did Mr. Gores always do this before?" Boss Luo asked, "just like just now to me and to Mr. Cardill." Dr. Gores listened carefully, but he didn't show any expression. He even asked confusedly, "What about me?" "Nothing." Boss Luo smiled slightly. "It doesn't matter if you don't answer. I'm just curious. I don't need to know the answer. Let's go, maybe we can encounter something wonderful." He walked in the front. Dr. Gore's face couldn't help but become gloomy. He had heard similar questions before. "Do you always live in a humble way?" The questions he heard in front of the statue in the third level of the Road of Trials. There was the sound of flowing water. Gurgling. Mayfair felt a little sober. She raised her head and saw a simple stone room covered by the light of the luminous stone. She was now stretched out in the pool of the stone room, bound by something. It was the dried root of a plant like a cross. Not only her, but the other her, who was the vice-captain of the temple, was also the same. The second Mayfair didn't wake up at this time. The first one to wake up was the first Mayfair. Mayfair looked at Captain Malik, who was standing silently in the pool with his eyes closed, and said weakly, Where is this? Goddess Gloria's meditation secret room. Captain Malik slowly opened his eyes and said indifferently, It's in the temple, but only I know this place. Mayfair opened her mouth and immediately smiled bitterly. If I ask why only you know this place at this time, isn't it a bit useless? It doesn't matter. Captain Malik said indifferently, There is still some time left before the ceremony. You can ask something you want to know, but I won't necessarily answer. What ceremony? The consciousness to take away the power of the goddess Gloria from your body. I really have the power of the goddess Gloria? The first Mayfair still couldn't believe it. No. Captain Malik said expressionlessly, Why do you think you can stay in today again and again? I always thought that this might be a nightmare. The first Mayfair said subconsciously. You are not wrong. Captain Malik said indifferently, This is indeed a nightmare for you, a nightmare created by another you. Her? The first Mayfair subconsciously looked at the second Mayfair next to him. Why? Captain Malik didn't seem to want to answer this question. He was silent as he said, He won't necessarily answer. Mayfair was also silent for a moment. Have you done something like this before? In so many today? You should have done it before, right? After all, in front of you, whether it's me or the other me, it seems that we can't resist, and we don't have the ability to resist. It seems that you still have a little fantasy about the return of death. Captain Malik smiled and said, I'm thinking, did the previous today come to this place like this time? You are going to tell me the answer, right? The first Mayfair said in a deep voice. This is the first time. Captain Malik said indifferently, This backtrack, after all, is constructed by the power of the goddess Gloria. Even I can't guarantee that I can wake up in time every today. Often when I wake up, the return has already appeared. I can't do anything at all. In fact, she never takes the initiative to meet you. Often, when you appear, she will kill you immediately. Like this time, you appeared in front of Gloria at the same time. It's special. You, the first Mayfair said, You brought me and the other me here to take away the so-called power of the goddess. What is your purpose to end this nightmare? 2. Captain Malik slowly took out a foot-long dagger at this time. Get rid of fate. Chapter 1821. Captain Malik treated the dagger that he pulled out from the statue of the goddess of Gloria in his hand with reverence. When the sharp dagger slowly slit open the first Mayfair's chest, dark red blood immediately blossomed like a flower and then slid down. The path of the blood was her skin, and the end was the pool in the secret room. The moment the red blood and the clear water mixed, the whole pool seemed to glow with a strange life. It began to shine and began to emit a breath of life. Soon, the whole stone room had been covered by the brilliance, and was even accompanied by some kind of sound, a whisper like a call. First Mayfair couldn't stop the dagger in Captain Malik's hand from cutting her chest, and there was no way to stop him from doing the same thing to the second Mayfair. Finally, the dagger also cut open the chest of the second Mayfair. Her blood also flowed little by little into the pool. Captain Malik opened his hands at this time and stepped back step by step, as if admiring a peerless art. His face still had a pious expression. Dong! That was the sound of the dagger naturally falling from his hand into the pool. Captain Malik directly knelt in the pool at this time. Glyph, glyph, glyph. He called the name of the goddess loudly. The unique black pattern was now crazily growing on his body. It even grew out of the surface of his body, forming a strange three-dimensional pattern. It actually looked like a human figure. First Mayfair felt that her life was gradually passing away. She believed that the other Mayfair was in the same situation at this time. Perhaps because she felt the impending death, the second Mayfair finally woke up in panic at this time. The resurrection of the goddess. The second Mayfair woke up as if she had grasped everything that was happening. Her face changed dramatically, and she was shocked and angry. Malik, stop. glyph must not come back. You will destroy the home of the elves. Stop. However, Captain Malik didn't seem to hear it. He was in some kind of frenzy. He was entangled by the hollow figure created by the black pattern. Second Mayfair struggled a few times at this time, and finally stopped powerlessly, lowering her head. Seeing her like this, First Mayfair suddenly felt discouraged. She muttered to herself, "Only I? Until now I still don't know anything, and I don't know, what do you want to know?" Second Mayfair said faintly. "Everything." First Mayfair gritted her teeth. Even if her life was constantly passing, her eyes were still stubborn. "This world is neither real nor fake." Second Mayfair whispered, "This is the answer. And the resurrection of glyph will destroy everything. The last home of the elves will be devoured immediately." "I don't understand," First Mayfair said angrily. Second Mayfair looked at her with a complicated gaze. "You will understand soon. When my consciousness and yours return, you will understand more clearly than anyone else. You have already experienced the return of death time and time again, can't you wait? Let me tell you." Captain Malik suddenly stood up. He had restrained the pious expression on his face, but at this time, under the hollow figure, he looked particularly strange. "You are her in the past." Only to hear him slowly said, "A her who destroyed everything. The reason why you can't reach tomorrow is because once you reach tomorrow, the power of the goddess glyph in your body will go berserk. The entire home of the elves will be destroyed. So, no matter what, she will not let you live through today. No matter how many times she has to kill you, she will not hesitate." "I will destroy my home?" First Mayfair looked at Captain Malik in disbelief. "How is it possible? If you don't say it, I won't believe it, I will never believe it." Captain Malik said indifferently, "It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. Anyway, it has already happened. They definitely exist in my memory, the memory of tomorrow." First Mayfair's thoughts were in a mess at this time. She only felt as if someone secretly cut a hole in her heart, and everything in her heart was crazily leaking out from this hole. The fear was uncontrollable, and her whole body had unconsciously trembled. Her loss of life had reached a terrifying level. Even her consciousness gradually became blurred. At the same time, in the pool, a small sapling was slowly growing. The fresh branches and leaves were opening. It was giving birth to something. "Do you see it?" Captain Malik opened his hands at this time and laughed crazily. "It is reconstructing a new life. Do you see it? Goliath is coming back. You are carrying the power of Brahma. Why must you be so obsessed with the power of Goliath?" Second Mayfair frowned at this time. Perhaps this was something that she, who knew everything, had never understood. Captain Malik said indifferently, "Do you know why I became an oracle, and when I became an oracle?" Second Mayfair shook her head. "It was after your father defeated the previous generation's oracle." Captain Malik said coldly, "Your father, from the trial road, reached a deal with the goddess Goliath and obtained the power to defeat the previous oracle. His performance in the ceremony was all seen by the goddess Brahma. Naturally, the goddess Brahma also knew that the sister Goliath, who was killed by her, will return. So, she already knew." Second Mayfair was surprised and immediately smiled bitterly. "Since she knew, why didn't she directly stop the union of my parents? Since she was worried about my birth, why didn't she directly kill me before I was born? She needs to support the entire elven homeland," Malik said. "Although the sacrifice of Goliath gave the elven homeland a chance to breathe, the erosion still exists. In order to fight against the power that swallowed the world, she dealt with it all the time. In fact, a Goliath actually wanted to return through rebirth, and a Brahma didn't intend to stop it at all. She had already fallen into a long period of regret because of the sacrifice of Goliath. So this time, she actually planned to properly guide the successor of Goliath's rebirth. Goddess Brahma, she Second Mayfair opened her mouth in disbelief. But Prama is worried about one thing. She is worried that Goliath's rebirth can't control the power of the gods. She needs to make some insurance for the last elven homeland. That insurance is you? Second Mayfair asked subconsciously. My father, he was the previous oracle. Captain Malik said expressionlessly. Isn't it ironic? At that time, your father defeated the previous oracle at the grand ceremony. Because he couldn't protect the glory of the goddess, the girl who was used as a sacrifice was taken away. He didn't even return to the temple, and had already committed suicide to atone for his sin. The arrogant him chose the most cowardly way to escape, and I, who witnessed all of this with my own eyes, was chosen to be the next oracle. It was also during the grand ceremony, just as I was waiting to receive blessings with my beloved, Prama quietly descended and implanted the seed of God's power in me. I am also the only elf in the history of the oracles to receive the power of Prama's seed of God's power. The most powerful elf. Captain Malik shook his head. It's a pity that I can't completely control this power of the gods. So in time reversal, I can only occasionally recover the memories of time reversal through some stimulation. But it doesn't matter. Because all of this is going to end soon. Today is going to be over soon, and it will be over successfully. Time had quietly come to midnight. It was about to reach the limit of Mayfair's time reversal. The sapling growing in the pool had become thick at this time. At its top, the emerald green new leaves were like flower buds at this moment, flower buds that were about to bloom. A faint light was penetrating from this leaf bud. A strong aura of life was spreading. As for the two Mayfairs, they were completely drained of blood and looked like withered flowers. Captain Malik walked in front of the leaf bud at this time, gently holding it with both hands, in order to welcome the moment when it bloomed. Finally, the leaf bud bloomed. The seven-colored brilliance instantly stung the eyes. Captain Malik's eyes were burning at this time. His hands holding the leaf bud trembled slightly, as if because of excitement. The hollow three-dimensional figure of the black pattern that grew from his body was even a little distorted. However, at the moment when the brilliance was released to the extreme, it suddenly darkened. Without any warning, the leaf bud that should have completely bloomed actually quickly withered in front of Malik's eyes. This withering even spread to the whole new sapling. It sank into the water. Captain Malik's hands were still in the air, and his face was still holding that fanatical smile. But his eyes, his gaze was different at this time. Why? Captain Malik muttered to himself, why? Failure! Why? It was dark. The entire Gloria's meditation room was completely dark at this time. Only a faint light was released from the waist of the second Mayfair at this time. No one knew when it started, but the cut on the chest of the second Mayfair had already healed. At this time, she was looking at this faint light from her waist in a daze. Impossible! With a hysterical roar, Malik instantly rushed in front of second Mephistopheles. He reached out his hand and forcibly tore open the small pouch on second Mephistopheles' waist. What entered his hand was shockingly a small box. Open it. Captain Malik seemed to be on the verge of losing his mind due to rage. His eyes were stiff. He gritted his teeth and opened the box. In the box, an emerald gem the size of a pebble was releasing dazzling brilliance. This is... The second Mayfair looked at the gem in the box inconceivably, as if she thought of something. Could it be that last time she had been carrying this box? Every time she backtracked, she would carry it from the beginning. In these few backtracking times, she only handed it over once. It was last time, today, in the village chief's water cart room. However, the box was not taken away and was even returned. But the thing in this box was no longer what it originally should be. Instead, it was this gem. What the hell is this? Malik grabbed second Mephistopheles by the collar and glared at him. At that moment, he looked like a ferocious monster. You want to know? I'll tell you. At this moment, A mocking voice with a trace of a bitch's aura slowly sounded in the stone room. This thing is called Aldosi's heart. It's a good thing that can transfer damage. Listening to the despicable words, Captain Malik suddenly turned around and saw a beautiful face. Gore's. Doctor. But what appeared in front of Malik, the two Mayfair, was not only Dr. Gore's beautiful face, but also Boss Luo. At this moment, at the moment when the origin of the gem in the box was revealed, Dr. Gore's couldn't help but look at the calm Boss Luo, as if to ask, "Why is there still this gem? I got a few more on the way." Boss Luo understood and then gave the answer. "Got a few more on the way?" Nonsense. After Dr. Gore's laughed twice in his heart, he just pretended that he didn't hear this evil voice and then stared at Captain Malik with full attention. He held the dagger in his hand. That's right, it was the dagger used to sneak attack Cardil. After Cardil turned into a black wind and escaped, the dagger was left in the corridor. Such a useful dagger, Dr. Gore's naturally wanted to take it back. It seemed to be called Eiffelta's blade or something. Facing the sudden appearance of Luaccio and Gore's, Captain Malik's anger quickly calmed down and he just frowned. "When did you come?" "Probably when you cut the chests of these two ladies." Dr. Gore's shrugged and chuckled. "I can't remember. Anyway, I have seen what I should see and heard what I should hear." Captain Malik's eyes were fixed at this moment. At the same time, in the pool, hundreds of sharp roots instantly shot out. At this critical moment, Dr. Gore's didn't say anything and used the ultimate defensive tool. Captain Luaccio. He directly hid behind Boss Luo. Boss Luo didn't directly resist this time. He casually waved the great holy light sword in his hand, and the arc-shaped sword light slashed out and the sharp and hard roots were instantly cut off. The sword light didn't diminish, instead, it continued to move forward, until it almost split the entire stone room into two halves. But at this time, Captain Malik was nowhere to be seen. At the corner of the stone room, there was a secret door that turned and opened. Obviously, he escaped from here. "Hey!" Dr. Gore's yelled in disappointment. Boss Luo didn't seem to care and walked to the two Mayfair. At this time, the two Mayfair looked up at him at the same time, but they didn't know why he suddenly stopped moving and just stood there. Shouldn't he save them immediately? It was indeed so. But he was thinking about which one to solve first. This was a problem. ########PS. As usual,